Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in these southern United States. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you have anything else to add, you can give us a phone call. That phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We'll go ahead and open the phone lines now because we will have some time to talk to you throughout the show. So go ahead and call in if you'd like. We do have a good bit of stuff to talk about today. We got some good guests lined up for you. Looking forward to the program. For folks who are just listening audio only on the radio, I've got a beach shirt on because I'm going to the beach tomorrow. It's a really cool shirt. It's got some dinosaurs and wind turbines on it. It's a pretty cool shirt. I like it. So let's jump right into this story about how Katie Britt and Tommy Tuberville want construction workers in the state of Alabama and across the country to make less money. That is the bottom line of this latest story. And it's something that we've been tracking here on the Valley Labor Report for a long time. It's about project labor agreements and their intentional misunderstanding or misrepresentation of what project labor agreements actually are. You'll remember that under the Biden administration, President Biden mandated project labor agreements on federal construction projects that were valued at greater than $35 million. Governor Ivey wrote a letter with several other governors to the Biden administration asking him to rescind this executive order. And so Tommy Tuberville and Katie Britt have written a similar letter to Trump now asking him to rescind this executive order because this executive order is one of the few that Trump has not yet rescinded from the Biden administration. And it's important to understand what project labor agreements actually are. What they actually are is agreements between a project developer and the local building trades unions. Yes, there are unions involved in these agreements, but it is not to only hire union members or use union contractors on construction projects. These project labor agreements simply set standards for pay and benefits and safety and apprenticeship utilization on these projects. And then after that is agreed to, any contractor can apply to work on these projects. But non-union contractors don't like to work on PLA projects because it means that at least for the work done on that project, they do have to pay their people union wages, which are going to be higher than the non-union wages. And so Tommy Tuberville and Katie Britt have written this letter saying that this executive order, the mandating the use of project labor agreements, quote unquote, threatens competitiveness. They further add that the nation's builders, union and non-union alike, deserve a level playing field where the American taxpayer gets the best value for their dollar and our workforce is free from unjust mandates. Now, this bit about a level playing field is hilarious because project labor agreements actually do create a level playing field. They take the labor costs out of the competition for these projects and they say, okay, look, everybody who is going to, we're literally leveling the playing field. Everybody who agrees to bid for this project is going to pay the same level for an iron worker, as a laborer, as a sheet metal worker, as an electrical worker, et cetera, and on down the line. We are literally leveling the playing field. That way, you cannot, as a non-union contractor, come in and get a low bid contract by virtue of exploiting your workers, by virtue of having more lax safety procedures by virtue of utilizing less apprentices and not setting up America's the next generation of America's tradesmen and women. It's literally leveling the playing field is what project labor agreements do. Okay, they continue. We respectfully request that you reverse the Biden administration policy and restore the long-established government neutrality in federal and federally assisted contracting, blah, 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 blah. The Associated Builders and Contractors, the non-union building contractor association, said in a statement that the ABC has long fought the Biden administration's burdensome, inflationary, and anti-competitive PLA mandate rule. PLAs negatively impact merit shop contractors. I just love how they say merit shop as if union contractors are not merit shops. It's just so freaking ridiculous. Reduce competition and increase costs. We are grateful for Senator Britt's leadership to advocate for federal contracts to be awarded based on merit to foster competition in the bidding process. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, just so stupid. And they think you're stupid because they think that you are going to fall for this. And I hope that you don't. But coincidentally, there was actually a recent study that came out of Illinois from the Illinois Economic Policy Institute analyzing some of the state of Illinois' track record with project labor agreements because Illinois has actually had a similar executive order on state construction projects for even longer than the federal government had, right? So in January of 2019, the study says Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker issued executive order number 2019-02 requiring all state agencies to comply with the Project Labor Agreements Act and include PLAs on public projects to ensure that they are completed with highly skilled workers. As a result, Governor Pritzker oversaw more than 800 PLA-covered projects during his first term in office, including hundreds at the Capital Development Board. An analysis of more than 2,500 total bids on 773 public building projects valued at $1.2 billion awarded by the Illinois Capital Development Board from 2017 through 2023, including 499 with PLAs and 274 without, reveals that PLAs increased bid competition by an average of 14% after accounting for project size and complexity, project location, project type, and other factors. Projects awarded immediately following Governor Pritzker's PLA executive order had more bids, 3.8 per project, than those just before, 3.1 per project, literally increasing competition. PLAs had no effect on total construction costs after accounting for project size and complexity, bid competition, project location, project type, and other factors. Because PLAs statistically strengthened bid competition during a period with tightening labor market and greater demand for construction services, they helped to lower costs for taxpayers, with each additional bid improving the likelihood that projects would come in below their engineers' estimates by 6%. And it also found that market shares of businesses owned by people of color, women, and military veterans were all between 1 percentage point and 2 percentage points higher on projects with PLAs. So this is a really, really fascinating study that basically showed that everything that these people are talking about is a lie. Right? Everything that Senator Britt is saying, everything that Senator Tupperville is saying, everything that Governor Ivey was saying about project labor agreements is a lie. Now, look, this is not the first study to show that project labor agreements actually do lower costs. And there are multiple reasons that studies have shown that. This one points to the increased competition on PLA projects as a reason for lowering costs. Another one is that PLA projects, by virtue of the fact that, the workers are more highly paid, there's a set sort of, safety program, there are higher utilization of apprentices and things like that because of all of this, you're more likely to have, like Governor Pritzker said, highly skilled workers actually on these jobs. And so you are less likely to have to go back and do rework. You are less likely to take longer than the original schedule to complete the project, and you're less likely to go over budget because you're already accounting for, paying highly skilled workers, right? So those are some of the reasons that a PLA project might actually make the project ultimately less expensive than a non-PLA project where contractors are incentivized to exploit and pay their workers as little as possible, right? Okay, but I don't want to be disingenuous with you. I don't want to be dishonest and misrepresent the state of the research. There are also studies that say the opposite, that say that PLA projects do ultimately increase the total costs of some of these projects. And so, look, what the truth of the matter is, I'm not totally, I can't say for 100% that I'm convinced one way or the other. But what I can say is that even the studies that do show that PLAs increased costs ultimately for the project, it is not that much. It's like 5%, right? It's not a lot. And if you're going to tell me as a taxpayer, as a worker, that if we pay 5% more to build this building, to develop this project, and we can guarantee that everybody on that project is getting paid union wages, that we are training the next generation of tradesmen and women, that we have a good safety program on that project, and that we can know that there's going to be it'll be less likely that people are hurt on the job, that they're going to have health care, that they're going to have a pension, then you know what? I want us to pay 5% more. So that we don't have projects where people are being paid $12, $13, $14 an hour without health care, without a pension, without retirement plans, where they don't have good safety programs. I am willing to pay 5% more and see the CEO of these contractors get a little bit less and the workers get a little bit more and the safety be a little bit better. And I actually think that is how most taxpayers are going to feel about this sort of thing. Let me know how you feel. 844-899-TVLR. 844-899-8857 is the number. Interested in your thoughts on this. I will say that, right here in Huntsville at Redstone Arsenal, there was a project labor agreement that was already ready to go. Like workers, we were ready to break ground to expand the Missile Defense Agency on the Arsenal. It was a big project. And the Building Trades Council had already agreed to the PLA. And Hegseth came down and was like, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And so they ripped up that PLA. And now, instead of work happening right now with local workers getting paid union wages, now everything is up in the air. And we don't know when the project is going to start. We don't know who's going to be working on it. We don't know if it's going to be union or non-union. And we don't know where the people are going to be coming from. Is it going to be Alabama workers who's going to be expanding the Missile Defense Agency on Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville? Or is it going to be people from Georgia or Mississippi, wherever the hell? We don't know because it doesn't have PLA. So it's very frustrating. Very frustrating seeing stuff like this. Very frustrating seeing our representatives in D.C. fighting so that construction CEOs can take more money and give the workers who actually build, the actual builders, they call in this letter, they say builders, not union and non-union alike, and they're referring to the CEOs. The CEOs of these companies are not builders. They are owners. They are owners of companies where workers build. It is so gross seeing our representatives in D.C. fighting so that the people who don't actually build can take home more money, can suck more of the value that is created by the workers, and leaving the workers that they actually represent out to dry. It's really gross seeing stuff like that. So yeah, there you go. Senator Britt, Senator Tupperville, they want construction workers in the state of Alabama and across the country to make less money. That's the bottom line. And there you go. We've got our guest on the line for our union profile this week, Daniel Walden. is the business manager and financial secretary treasurer of the Sheet Metal Air Rail and Transportation Union, SMART, Local 48. Daniel, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for having me on. It's a great pleasure doing this.
It's great to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time. Wanted to ask you about, before we started talking about your local, how you joined your local. How did you become a SMART member?
Jacob, pretty much as by luck, to be honest with you. I absolutely knew nothing about unions coming out of high school. It wasn't presented at all. And, I went to work for a general contractor straight out of high school, worked 3 years. And luckily, the HVAC mechanical company that was doing all their work for that GC was a union contractor. And one of the people that worked for that company come up to me one day and said, "Hey, we're needing an apprentice. Would you like to join?" And I was like, as a young kid, I was 22 years old, and I asked him, "Okay, tell me about it." And he went in all the details, and that sounds great. I was just recently married, had a young family, and that sounded like a great way and opportunity to grow for myself and my family.
Absolutely. Well, that's so cool to hear stuff like that. It's really great to hear both sides of how people came into the union movement. I came from a similar in that I didn't have a big family history of unions, and so it's great for people to kind of be the first in their family to join a union and to recognize the value of the labor movement. And it's also great to hear when somebody's like a third or fourth generation union member. There's a lot of value in both of those stories, and so you kind of alluded to it there. You started working for this contractor doing HVAC stuff. What's all the work that members of Local 48 do?
Jacob, I get that question asked a lot, and it's like they don't know what we do, but it's because we do so many different things. It pretty much you can take a flat sheet of metal and we have to turn it into something else before we can go and install it. It doesn't matter if it's us like HVAC ductwork, any type of design, fabrication, installation of an HVAC system. That's what we do. Like I said, the ductwork, fans, louvers, kitchen hoods, welding, architectural. I mean, and architectural includes metal roofing, lagging, custom gutters, downspouts, flashing, coping, etc. And I know that's a lot that I just said, but it's because we do so much. We really want to make sure the people that's part of Local 48 and goes through our apprenticeship is we can make them the best mechanic they can possibly be and just be so well-rounded.
How many members would you say that Local 48 has, and what's the jurisdiction?
Right now, we have right at 325 members covering our jurisdiction, and our jurisdiction covers from the Tennessee line to about 50 miles south of Montgomery, and from the Georgia line to the Mississippi line. We have several different contractors within that jurisdiction that make up our union.
And so that's a big part. That's most of the state of Alabama, and we just talked a little bit about what your members do. Most building trade unions have an apprenticeship program, and so I'm interested in. Could you talk to us a little bit about that and about what the apprentices are going to learn, like in year one and then in year two, et cetera?
Absolutely, this is one of my passions right here. I advocate for this so much. Our apprenticeship program is a 4-year program, and it's a lot like college of having to attend and complete the program, but as in not just mine, and I advocate for all other union programs as well. These programs, you walk out completely debt free. So parents, if you're listening, this is a good avenue for your kids and adults as well. If you want to learn a great craft, a great trade, and complete a good program and make really good money with great benefits, this is a great way to go and absolute walkout debt-free and it's zero cost to you. Now, as in our apprenticeship, year one, you're going to be learning the basics from just basic hand layout. You're going to be learning the history of Local 48. Year two, it does get a little tougher. It's not that it's hard; it's just that it's new to you, and you're just going to be doing a lot more of hand layout, fabrication, welding, etc. Year 3 and 4, I would say, will be a little bit easier. It's not that it's easier. It's just you've already done it. You've already done it in year 2, and you're repeating yourself for year 3 and year 4 on different sizes, different layouts, different structures, etc. To be able to become that top-notch mechanic. As in the ductwork, the ductwork layout, all aspects, just like I spoke before, and the welding itself, they didn't touch base on that, but that's stick, MIG, and TIG on all types of metals, whether it be carbon, aluminum, stainless, and so on.
Right. And what does the compensation package look like from beginning as an apprentice, as a first year, through to when you graduate and you become a journeyman?
Absolutely. Starting out as a first year apprentice, you're right around $19 an hour on the check, but what you're not looking at, a lot of people don't look at, is your benefits. Total package of what we offer. It costs right around $35 an hour for you to be apprentice. That's the benefits you get, whether it be the 100% free Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance to you and your family. That's a family coverage. Your pension, your 401k, and there's several other benefits that's tacked onto that as well.
That is huge. $19 an hour, that may not sound like, I mean, for a lot of people, $19 an hour sounds good, and just even if you hadn't said anything else, frankly, but that is so important, especially for a young person. You're young and you feel invincible, and you're not really thinking about, am I going to have to go to the hospital, or am I going to need health care or something like that, or you're not thinking about retirement. But being able to get a pension as a 19-year-old and paying into that and have a retirement plan and have that retirement security is so important, and is something that is so valuable that the vast majority of American workers do not have. And so the opportunity to have a pension and to have good health care as a 19-year-old, as an 18-year-old is something that's so valuable that everybody deserves it. But that's not the economy that we live in right now. And so if that's something that you want, you're going to probably need to join the building trades unions.
That's right, Jacob. When someone comes in to apply for my apprenticeship, these kids, they don't know what a pension is. And I try to explain to them how important that is. And you can't get that anywhere else. There's not a whole lot of places that offer a pension. They don't even know what that pension is. And when I explain it to them, it's like, wow, I don't think I can live off Social Security when it comes that time. So I try to educate that person as much as I possibly can. It's like, say, a 401k. There's a lot of people that think a 401k is a retirement. And I correct them very quickly. That is not your retirement. That is a supplement to your retirement. Because once that 401k is cashed out and gone, it's gone. It's not that monthly pension payment that you're going to get every month.
Right. I mean, that was supposed to be, the retirement in America was supposed to be for a long time a three-legged stool. You were supposed to have your Social Security, you were supposed to have a pension, and you were supposed to have a 401k. And they have, just totally taken away, for the vast majority of people, totally taken away the pension. There are people in Congress who would love to take away Social Security and leave you only with your 401k, which leaves you totally at the whim of the market. And if something like 2008 happens again and you were about to retire, well, you got to work for another 2 or 3 or 4 years to be able to have that same amount of money. And that's and so having a pension is just so important for that stability and the security in your retirement. You have a couple of different training facilities in your territory, right? In Birmingham and Rogersville.
That is correct. We have such a large jurisdiction that we have to split up the training programs. The one in Birmingham is 1108 29th Street North, Birmingham, Alabama 35234. And the one in Rogersville is 16245 US Highway 72 in Rogersville. We take students in both locations year round. We're not like some trades that only do once, maybe twice a year. We take students in year round. So if it sounds like something that someone has out there is interested in, please, by all means, you can give us a call at 205-322-9016. That's 205-322-9016.
All right, there you go. If y'all are interested, give Daniel Walden a call. Definitely something to check out, as are all of the building trade unions in the area. Brother, is there anything else that you think is important to let people know about Local 48 before we let you go?
We're growing. We're growing strong. When I first come into office, we had around 220 members, and
wow.
We've been able to grow our market share to over 325 now. And it's the work is plentiful, the work is busy, and it's a great opportunity not only for a young person but anybody. We do not discriminate. It don't matter if you're 18 years of age or we had a 65-year-old apprentice come in a couple years ago. The man just wanted to work, and we'll take anybody and give anybody a chance that wants to come in and show what they can do.
Well, there you go. That's another thing that the building trades talk about a lot is career transitions. And if you're coming out of a different career, you want to try something different, maybe work with your hands a little bit. Getting a building trade union apprenticeship program is definitely something to think about. So, Brother Daniel Walden, business manager and financial secretary treasurer for Smart Local 48. That's the Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Union here in Alabama. They mostly do sheet metal work, HVAC, stuff like that. Daniel, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank y'all, Jacob.
All right. Had a couple of questions in the chat about PLAs. Pigeon said, is every job site that union workers work on PLA compliant? No. Union contractors can work on non-PLA construction sites, just as non-union contractors can work on PLA construction sites. But the thing that actually makes non-PLA construction sites less competitive and more difficult for union contractors to work on is that you've got these non-union contractors coming in and lowballing because they're paying their workers, not much at all, because they're not doing good training, because they don't have strong safety programs. And so they can come in and underbid the union contractors. And in a lot of states, you have these lowest bid rule that requires the state to take the lowest bid. And then after they get that lowest bid, they come in and they're not able to man the project. And so it takes a little bit longer, and they they go over schedule and over budget, and you end up being actually spending more money sometimes than if you had just paid a union contractor in the first place. So yeah, that's why the actual less competitive way to bid projects is by not using PLAs, right? Because PLAs literally level the playing field. So no, every job, but even despite that, sometimes union contractors are able to get they are able to get projects on some non-PLA projects. Pigeon says, yeah, I was on a job site as a non-union worker, and that's exactly how they went. Yeah. I mean, it's that's how it goes.
Scraping the bottom of the barrel, to see just how cheaply they can get it across. And, I mean, like you said, there's going to be ramifications for that in terms of the quality of the work, the stability of the workforce, the timeliness of the work. It's all impacted.
Yep.
So sometimes you get what you pay for, and then, at the end, you end up worse off.
Yep. Very sad, says Pigeon in the chat. If you want to chat with us as we're live, you can go to Facebook or YouTube at The Valley Labor Report, even if you don't want to call in. We do check out the chat. We don't read everyone that comes in, but we do check it out. And we'll read off some of them. Joe and Mel in the Facebook chat, as always, saying good morning. Thank y'all for tuning in. I appreciate it. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number if you'd like to call in. 844-899-8857. We're going to take a break really quick, and we're going to be right back. We're going to be talking to UAW Region 8 Director Tim Smith. Stay tuned.
This is Elise Bryant from the Labor Heritage Power Hour. We're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit nalc.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller. Today, we just wrapped up a conversation with Smart Local 48 Representative Daniel Walden about the sheet metal union in Alabama. We also talked about Katie Britt and Tommy Tuberville's wanting to lower construction worker wages. We're going to be talking to Tim Smith from the UAW here momentarily, and talking about last week in Southern Labor and Boss Watch on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number and the line is open. That phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave a voicemail throughout the week, and we might respond to it on the next show. Just a reminder, if you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then think about getting your local to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey y'all, let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. And we want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. And we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. As most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class here in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us.
Let's jump right into last week in Southern Labor. Here's what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from July 11th to the 18th. In new union campaigns, 50 workers at People's Transit in Atlanta, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU Local 732. 3 workers at Amentum in Corpus Christi, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW. 100 workers at a national limousine in Atlanta, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with ATU Local 732. 65 workers at Arkema in Axis, Alabama, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, RWDSU. 8 workers at Loomis in Charleston, West Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Federation of LEOs, PBA Armored Car Division. 18 workers at Univar Solutions in Garland, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE, Local 564. 21 workers at Fleming Mason Energy Cooperative in Flemingsburg, Kentucky, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 2100. 7 workers at Velocity Electric and Automation in Grain Valley, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the IBEW, Local 124. 32 workers at Six Flags Entertainment in Kansas City, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, IATSE, Local 31. In election results, 2 groups of workers withdrew their petition for a union election last week, those being 5 workers at Atos in Merritt Island, Florida, who had been seeking to unionize with IBEW Local 2088, and 37 workers at Tulane in New Orleans, Louisiana, who had been seeking to unionize with Workers United. Workers who had previously filed a petition to decertify the Utility Workers Union of America, UWUA Local 335, as the union representing 26 57 workers at American Water MSG in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, withdrew their decertification petition. Starbucks workers at 2 locations voted to unionize with Starbucks Workers United last week, both in Austin, Texas, with one group voting 10-0 and the other 6-3. 1,100 workers at 14 U.S. Geological Survey USGS locations across the country voted to unionize with the National Federation of Federal Employees, NFE-IAM. The union reports that some units had a 99% yes vote, and more elections are scheduled at other USGS locations. In grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases, drivers with the Z-Trip IRIS microtransit program in Kansas City filed a federal class action lawsuit demanding thousands in overtime back pay that drivers had a right to receive, but the company never paid. Low-wage workers with Stand Up KC and members representing faith, labor, and civil rights organizations stood in solidarity with the drivers during a press conference announcing the lawsuit. The NLRB reached a settlement agreement with Lowe's in New Orleans after finding merit in the unfair labor practice charges filed by the union that workers there attempted to organize with. As a result of the settlement, Lowe's will now pay thousands of dollars in back pay to workers it illegally fired and will send a notice to its employees reminding them that it is their right to form a union. Ultimately, workers there did not win their union last year, but their campaign did lead to the company raising wages for workers nationwide. In strikes and bargaining updates, the Communication Workers of America, CWA, were joined by Unite Here Local 23, the UAW, the Charlotte Metro Central Labor Council, the AFL-CIO, and other local coalitions to rally outside 2 Wells Fargo Center in Charlotte, North Carolina, to publicly condemn Wells Fargo for their illegal union-busting tactics and to demand that the company agreed to a fair contract with Wells Fargo Workers United, CWA. Recently, Wells Fargo Labor Relations Executive Stan Sherrill has been visiting unionized branches to interrogate union members and to spread misinformation, calling union signage, quote, propaganda, and illegally encouraging workers to file for a decertification petition. CWA has filed an unfair labor practice charge with the National Labor Relations Board. 200 drivers at Genesis Logistics, a DHL supply chain subsidiary, held a practice picket last week to demand a fair and timely first Teamsters contract. Earlier this year, the group voted by an over 90% margin to join the Teamsters. Since then, the company has stalled negotiations and refused to engage seriously. Last week, the drivers voted to authorize a strike in response to management's delays and illegal anti-union behavior. UFCW members and officers went on Seth Harris's Power at Work podcast last week to discuss how their union was able to get the first new pension in the meatpacking sector in nearly 50 years. They went into a little bit more detail than the officer did on our program, so it's worth a listen even if you've heard our coverage of it. ATU Local 1546 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana is refusing to sign off on the local transit authority's safety plan, which is required for the region to get federal transit dollars. The union president says that administrators have allowed a systemic failure of safety. In political and legislative updates, Labor Lab released a new report detailing how union compliance with reporting requirements continues to increase even as employers and union busters continue to be negligent in their reporting responsibilities. The IAM is renewing its calls for increased protections for airline workers in the wake of a guilty plea from somebody who assaulted one of their members, punching them into a state of unconsciousness while at work. Specifically, the union is calling for mandatory federal penalties for assaults on all aviation workers, increased staffing and security in high-risk airport areas, expanded training for de-escalation and reporting, and zero-tolerance policies that are jointly enforced by airlines and federal agencies. There are some great new analysis pieces up on Confined Space, a newsletter about workplace safety and labor issues. Stephen Knight analyzed a recent study that concluded that immigration enforcement undermines worker safety. Even some Republicans are starting to get nervous about Trump's education funding freeze, including Alabama's Senator Britt. Trump appears to be preparing to try to steamroll the Tennessee Valley Authority, the utility company for Tennessee, much of Mississippi, and part of Alabama, Georgia, and Kentucky, and prepare it for privatization. Communities and environmental organizations are already fighting back, as are unions that represent TVA workers. The Trump administration has fired 17 immigration judges across the country without cause, according to the International Federation of Professional and Technical Employees, IFPTE, the union that represents the judges. The AFL-CIO has secured a majority in the House for the Protecting America's Workforce Act, which would rescind Trump's illegal executive order rescinding union rights for most federal workers. Now they are calling on Congress members who co-sponsored the legislation to sign what's called a discharge petition to bring the legislation to the floor for a vote. In internal union affairs, the AFL-CIO kicked off their bus tour across the country last week, calling for economic justice. The IAM joined in Charlotte, North Carolina, and highlighted their union's fight at the airport there. The AFL-CIO stopped in Nashville, too, with workers there highlighting the negative impacts of federal funding cuts. Unions are supporting their members who were affected by the Texas floods, with the IAM opening an assistance portal and the Texas AFL-CIO releasing a comprehensive list of resources and more. If we missed anything, let us know at tvlr.fm/contact, and we'll try to include it on next week's roundup. We do have our guest in the Zoom. Our guest this week is Tim Smith, the UAW Region 8 Director. Tim, welcome to the Valley Labor Report. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
You're welcome, Jacob. It's always an honor to be on your show, and just thank you for what you do for labor.
Well, I appreciate it, and same to you, of course. We have a really, really cool story from the UAW that is the reason that I had reached out to you initially, and that is that you went to Korea just last week. So you might even still have jet lag. You've been in the country for such a short amount of time after you got back from Korea, but you went there to talk to the Korean Metalworkers Union. Can you talk to us about the importance of international cooperation between unions? I want to talk a little bit about specifically why y'all were there meeting with the Korean Metalworkers Union, but just generally, I find that workers sometimes might not understand the importance of making connections with workers in similar industries in other countries.
Well, again, thank you for having me on the show, and it was truly an honor to represent the UAW, but we had a great team that went, myself and Christine, our internationals fair. She runs our internationals fairs, and then Chris and Jason out of the president's office. So we went to deliver a message that we signed a memorandum of understanding on Tuesday morning. It was an honor to stand there with their president and shake hands and sign that, to where we're going to work globally together, hand in hand, when it comes to organizing, when it comes to collective bargaining, in every aspect of their union and our union. And as you well know, we're trying to organize Kia, Hyundai, and a lot of companies that are built and based in their country. But there's one thing that people should know: trade unionists around the world are no different, whether you're in the United States, you're in Korea, whether you're in Japan, wherever you're at. They were so humble and graceful and starving for information. And we learned a lot ourselves. One thing that really they wanted to hear is how the stand-up strike went in 2023, what they could use to learn from that. But, it's a little different in their country on how they strike and how they do things. So my hat goes off to them. It was an amazing week, and I can tell you a little more, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you tell them about the stand-up strike, and how do you think that they, what are some of the lessons that they felt like they could take even in the different legal environment in Korea?
Well, again, and let's speak about that. They got to be very careful. If they institute an illegal strike, they could face jail time and prison time, which has happened there over the years. Matter of fact, while we were there and we toured the GM plant on Thursday, they were on a strike, trying to get better wages and a lot of things in their collective bargaining agreement trying to get done. So when we went that day, they were actually first shift. The last 2 hours they struck. And while we were there, the clerical and cleric officer workers were walking out. It was a pretty amazing thing to see. But also at the entrance of where the workers go in and go to work, there's tents set up, and the bargaining committee around the clock sleeps in them tents. In them tents where the workers have have the ability to be right there with them every day. They have these huge bulletin boards posted of what's happening. We were on there showing where I had met with the Secretary of Labor in the Parliament, and we walked the floor. They were so gracious. They wear their headbands, and we put that on to walk through to show solidarity with those workers, and shaking their hands. So it was an amazing day, but they got to be very careful. So the stuff we give them, they're gonna sit back and see what they can use to help them when it comes time for something they may need to strike.
Absolutely. And so the Korean Metal Workers Union, they do represent workers at Hyundai in Korea, which is something that I feel like most folks in Alabama and in the United States would not have guessed. They would not have guessed that that Hyundai workers in Korea already have a union, which is something that Hyundai workers in the United States don't have yet. And so, in some ways, they're a little bit farther along even than folks in the United States. But so the Korean Metal Workers Union does represent workers at Hyundai in Korea. What are some of the problems that they are dealing with the company over there?
Well, let me say this. They're a very young union. They're about 193,000 strong and growing. And we're definitely going to stand with them, whether we some of the Hyundai workers that we met, also, GM workers we met, they want to come to the U.S. and help. They want to come to the U.S. and explain to the Hyundai workers, the same thing we talk about, that, down in Hyundai, they, first of all, we had child labor being exploited down there, but they want to come and be able to talk to these workers and explain to why they need a union and what benefits them in Korea. So we're going to work hand in hand. There's not much there. I got to be careful what I want to put out here because we got some strategies put together, but it goes back. We're very similar what we do. It's just they do a little things different. And I don't want to give that away right here today, but thank you for asking me for that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned that the UAW, the United Auto Workers, and the Korean Metal Workers Union did sign a memorandum together. What was in that memorandum?
We're going to work hand in hand to organize and collective bargaining strategies. And there's a lot more, but I'll give you them two pieces. I know you want more, Jacob. I know you keep going there, but we got work to do, and we're going to work hand in hand. But again, let me just make this very clear. I don't care if you're in Seoul, Korea, or you're in the United States. Our hearts, our minds, our bodies, everything about us is the same. I had to have interpreters to help me understand, and that was challenging. But at the end of the day, everything they said, I heard. We're true trade unionists. They want what we want, and we want what they want. And it doesn't matter where you're at in the world. They want justice. They want good wages. They want good livable wages. And they want to be treated right and fair, and we're going to work hand in hand to make sure that happens.
I think that there's such a value in workers understanding that there's so much more that unites us than that separates us. And we've had the honor of being able to interview workers from other countries on this program in Zambia and India and Mexico. I've been in rooms with the Japanese Public Sector Workers Union, and that has always struck me how they're dealing with the same problems that we are. Obviously, in some countries, they're dealing with it to a higher level, like in countries like Zambia or India or Mexico, they're dealing with worse exploitation. And in other countries, maybe in Europe, it's maybe a little bit better. But fundamentally, we are facing the same problems, and it's going to take the same thing for us to be able to win, and that's coming together and organizing, collective bargaining, stuff like that. So
I want to say this right out in front of the Parliament. Their dealerships in Korea are a little different here. Like right up the street from me here in Bowling Green, Kentucky. We have a huge GM dealership, and massive amount of cars are everywhere. Well, there they have basically a showroom from what I seen where I was, and they have salesmen. But some of the salesmen that are not full time are been trying to get collective bargaining rights for 2 years. So out in front of the parliament, they have been set up in tents for 2 years. 2 years. So it was truly an honor to go inside of them tents, set with those workers. Now I got to remind you, while we were there, it was extraordinary hot, 101, 102, 103 degrees, humidity like I never seen. Here in Kentucky, we got it. But to set in, and you got to remember, it can get as low as -4 there in the winter and snow. But they've been there for 2 years. Think about it, 2 years fighting for the right to have collective bargaining rights. What does that tell you about them? And also when they imposed martial law there, they were outside the parliament, and what they told us, they seen the tanks and helicopters rolling in. They started sending message out to their leadership. Within hours, you had 10 to 15,000 people, 10 to 15,000 people that roared into there that helped overthrow. And now they have what they feel the president is more labor friendly. They're trying to get 2 legislative pieces passed. One of them is the yellow envelope bill, which will give them better collective bargaining rights. So we stood with them on those bills. I asked when I was in the parliament, that was my main objective. Please work with the KWMU to get this legislative passed so it will help workers. So we hope and pray that the new president will listen to the workers in that country and give more collective bargaining rights. But that was truly an honor to be in that tent, stand outside of that tent. And we took posters that we used in our stand-up strike and wrote messages of encouragement for those workers.
Fantastic. Well, that's a really exciting story, and looking forward to that relationship continuing to develop and strengthen. There's a lot of stuff going on stateside with the UAW, though. Wanted to touch on some of those things pretty briefly. There's there's an election here in Huntsville, and there's an ongoing campaign in Kentucky at the Blue Oval SK facility, and so, some of the things that have been going on there is that management, despite the fact that Blue Oval SK is a joint venture between Ford and SK, which I can't remember which company SK comes from. I think it's Korea. But Ford has been a union company for ages, and now this joint venture is trying to fight the union campaign, trying to convince their workers not to unionize, and retaliating against workers despite, serious concerns that workers have relative to safety and other things. Can you talk about some of the safety concerns that workers have at the Bosque facility in Kentucky and how management is retaliating?
Well, it's been brutal, but, we have a good relationship with Ford, but I'm very disappointed in what Ford is allowed to happen. I don't run Vice President Laura Dickerson now is the vice president over Ford, and I'm sure she's going to continue to pass this message on as Chuck Browning did. Chuck has retired, but don't get too concerned. He's still in Chattanooga, and he's still going to get through that agreement. We'll talk about that in a minute. But actually, tomorrow, and my entire staff out of Kentucky will be in Glendale, will be at Local 3047's Union Hall, Matulsa. I got to give them kudos. At Matulsa workers, how they have, put their hand out and letting them use their hall, feeding them, whatever they need, and the organizers are stationed there. But yes, the health and safety issues are major, major issues. Now, the company's downplaying it, but let me back up. So if me and you hard in there on Monday morning, we're going to go through a 4-hour anti-union class. And here's what I tell workers is when they bring you right in to tell you what you don't need, that should be a red flag of, okay, if they're working that hard to tell me what I don't need, that's a red flag that, wait a minute here, there's something there. And then not only that, they have to go through day in, day out with engineers, supervisors hounding them. So my message tomorrow is I've lived this, I've breathed this 35 years ago, what they did to me and what they did to my workers in my plant. You got to go in, do your job, and you got to talk to workers, and you got to say, we need a union. If they're telling you that bad why you don't need something, that's even more of a message you need it, because we want them to wear this logo on this shirt. We want to sit and bargain with them, and we want to get them the best contract as we did at Ultima and Spring Hill, and we will do that. We will deliver. I promise you, we will deliver just like we did in Lordstown and we did in Spring Hill. So they just gotta stay strong.
Yeah, absolutely, and so we're going to continue following that story and looking forward to workers winning their union there. You mentioned the negotiations with Volkswagen; those continue to be ongoing. We're on the air right now in Chattanooga. What's the latest that you can share with us on those negotiations?
Well, I want to first of all, Vice President Browning has retired, but here's a man that's totally committed, retired or not. He's going to get the best agreement in Chattanooga at Volkswagen for those workers. But also, we got a bargaining committee down there of 20 strong that are laying in there. It's been over 10 months now. Okay, Jacob, we wanted this contract done in December. Okay, you got to remember that, and people need to understand that. But when the company is slow walking us and trying to break us, we know how to play that game as well. Okay. And we're going to stay there. We're going to get the best agreement. There's a lot of great things that's happened this week that I can't talk about, but we're going to get there and we're going to be very successful. These workers are going to be happy, I believe, when this contract's over. But we're laying in there. We're going to stay strong. But again, also those workers in the plant, I want to commend them for staying strong and going into work every day and wondering what's going on, because it's hard on them. Okay. I've also been there and done that. But stay strong, keep wearing them shirts, keep believing in your bargaining committee, keep believing in this great union, and we'll deliver for you. I promise.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, just to kind of illustrate the point, you mentioned when we were talking yesterday that the UAW recently got a new contract at Carlex in Nashville, and you've talked some about GM and Spring Hill, and GM and Spring Hill just announced, that they were expanding production. Can you talk a little bit about the Carlex contract and what you were able to win for folks, what the union was able to win for folks over there in Spring Hill?
Carlex Glass, produces a quality glass for a lot of companies. And just the last 2 or 3 weeks, we sat down and reopened the contract. I want to brag on Rodney and my servicing rep, Tim Chance. We also had pre-meetings with the company. They wanted concessions, but there's no concessions to be had. Okay, so long story short, $60 million investment, a new line. It's en route, or it's coming very soon. They're going to be installed there. Will help us produce glass, whether it's EV or ICE, for ICE vehicles. Great wage increases. It was overwhelmingly ratified by the membership. And this plant was sort of, concerned where the future stood. So this helps solidify, them moving forward. This plant's been around for 75 years in Nashville, and I see many, many more years of workers having a good job there. So we're very proud to talk about that, which I did yesterday at the AFL-CIO bus stop.
Yeah, that's right. Vonda's in the chat mentioning that you are a hardworking dude because you were just in Nashville yesterday at the AFL-CIO's bus tour, and then only, having gotten in from Korea only a few days before that. And just to tell the audience, I mean, every time that I have ever talked to Brother Smith, he's like, oh, well, I just flew in from the airport from this part. He's got a huge region. I mean, it's the South plus like 4 or 5 other states. And so every time I talk to him, he's like, oh, I just got in from this place and now I'm on the road to another airport over here, and then I'm traveling over there. And I mean, it's just constantly on the move. I mean, it makes me tired when I listen to him. And I think I'm about half your age, brother. So I really commend the work that you do for the union and appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
If you don't mind, I want to give Vonda a shout out. This lady is amazing. She chairs the Central Labor Council there in Tennessee. I mean, she knocks it out of the park. She stands solid for workers and everything in Nashville, with the local government there that she has to deal with, and the government she has to deal with, and that governor there, Bill Lee. And I got to give kudos to her and the board there. They do an amazing job. And yesterday at the Pipe Fitters Hall, Billy Dykus and AJ and the entire executive board there, they do an amazing job. So it was a great event yesterday, and we're continues to work hand in hand with Vonda. We're going to actually be in the Labor Day parade, and we're excited about that coming up. But she's an amazing lady. She inspires me.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, she's great, and she's been a great help for us over at our labor council here in North Alabama. I'm constantly reaching out to her and asking her for advice, so she's very helpful. Brother Smith, Tim Smith, Region 8 Director for the United Auto Workers Union. Thank you so much for taking the time today, and look forward to talking to you again.
Jacob, can I say one other thing?
Yes, sir. Please do.
We got what's going on in Huntsville. I just want any of those workers that's listening to understand at Navistar, no different than Bosch. Know you got to vote on August the 7th. We support you. The organizers on the ground support you. I support you. We wish you nothing but the best. But we want to be able to stand with you and have a voice in your workplace. So good luck.
All right. Thank you. Region 8 Director Tim Smith for the United Auto Workers. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break really quick, folks. We're going to be right back with Boss Watch, and I think we'll probably talk a little bit about the TVA. So also would love to take your calls. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857 if you have any thoughts about that or anything else that we've talked on the show or maybe that we haven't. Go ahead and give us a call, and we'll take your call on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communications system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. Appreciate everybody tuning in. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857 if you'd like to call in. There's been some recent news. Talk to us about this Union Plus thing, Adam.
Yeah, a lot of you may be familiar with Union Plus. If you're a union member, you may already know about, some of the discounts and benefits like reduced rates at hotels and car rentals. But Union Plus is now running its 5th annual sweepstakes where union members can win cash prizes up to $40,000 or a trip to New York City. Proceeds support Union Plus's mission to provide hardship grants, scholarships, as well as helping members access legal, health, and mortgage programs. There is no purchase necessary, but you must see the official rules at unionpowerusa.com.
There's been some news about education recently in the Supreme Court, Adam. You're a former educator, obviously. Your teaching certificate is still active. You still keep that active, is my understanding.
That's right. I'm certified through 2027.
There you go. So what's been the latest? And I was surprised when I saw the news that Senator Britt actually was speaking out against some of these funding freezes from the Department of Education. What's going on there?
Yeah, let's start there. We'll hit the Alabama side of this, which is that, there are frozen education funds from the federal government, and it's about $68 million for the state of Alabama that's impacted, close to $7 billion nationally that's been frozen. And Senator Katie Britt was among 10 Senate Republicans that urged the Office of Management and Budget to release this money. So Britt signed onto a letter to OMB Director Russell Vaught and asked that it be released. And, interestingly enough, they said that the decision to withhold this funding is contrary to President Trump's goal of returning K-12 education to the states, going on to say that this funding goes directly to states and local school districts where local leaders decide how this funding is spent, because as we know, local communities know how to best serve students and families. Withholding this funding denies states and communities the opportunity to pursue localized initiatives to support students and their families. So that's interesting. And, of course, State Superintendent Eric Mackey was happy to hear that. He's been making the rounds in the news lately, very concerned about the impact of this funding freeze, because basically they expected it on July 1st, and they got an email on June 30th from the federal government saying, oh, sorry, actually, they are under review right now, which is a big old bummer if you are one of the staff members who are funded through this position, right? Whether you're a teacher or an assistant, and needless to say, the students and families that benefit from these programs. So I was a little surprised by that. Tommy Tuberville also said he did not sign the letter, but he did say that he expected them to be released soon. And that he has spoken with Secretary of Education Linda McMahon about it. So just to give you the breakdown, some of the funding that's actually been frozen here, these are all federal programs, and some of them are support services for English language learners, some for migrant students, some for summer and after school programs, and some include, teacher training and salaries, including efforts to reduce class sizes. And according to Dr. Mackey, the state superintendent, there's at least 200 teaching positions here that are under threat. So, that's a big concern. It is interesting that Senator Britt spoke out, so we'll see. The House Democrats had already done a similar letter previously. Congresswoman Terry Sewell, was the only one from Alabama to sign that, it's my understanding. So we have that going on. We also have some issues going on with the Supreme Court. And I'll borrow here a little bit from AFT's statement, American Federation of Teachers, saying that the Supreme Court delivered a significant blow to public education in America, effectively allowing President Trump's attempt to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education to proceed while a case challenging the unlawful cuts is considered. So the Supreme Court order granted the government's request for a stay, lifting 2 lower court decisions that had blocked mass firings and the unlawful elimination of many of the department's crucial offices. So it was a big coalition that filed the complaint, including various affiliates of AFT and AFT National, as well as AFSCME, American Association of University Professors, and the SEIU. And they had won previously an injunction in district court, but disappointing to see this happen because the Trump-Vance administration has basically laid out a plan to dismantle the Department of Education, and according to AFT and I think many others, the National Education Association as well. They see this as an unlawful plan that will immediately and irreparably harm students, educators, and communities across our country. And so the Department of Education at the federal level does do any number of things, quite a number of things, and education is still primarily a state and local issue. But like I said, just the frozen funds here in Alabama impacts hundreds of teaching positions, as well as other staff, right? So there's a lot of funding that does come from the federal government, and it predominantly is geared towards low-income students, students who are learning English, students with disabilities, and so it's disproportionately impacting the most marginalized and the folks who need it the most. So it's a big concern, that AFT, NEA, and quite a number in the labor movement are really, really concerned that you have offices like, the Office of Special Education Programs and the Office of Federal Student Aid under threat, right? I mean, these are important offices, and you've had mass layoffs already in the works, under the Department of Education. It's relevant here in Huntsville. I've thought about how many of the schools in Huntsville, as well as the surrounding areas, are Title I schools, meaning they have a significant number of impoverished students, right? So these funds are really important to try to help, meet these needs, because frankly, it's just harder to teach students who are dealing with challenges like that, whether it's poverty or learning a new language. You're going to require more staff. It takes more resources to try to meet those needs. And so, it's really disappointing. But, yeah, pleasant surprise to see Senator Britt speak out about it. We'll see. They say it's going to be released soon. It was, supposed to hit July 1st. School is starting very soon. A lot of teachers have to report back to work in Alabama next week. Can you believe that? In July, right? Like, it's pretty wild. But yeah, that's where it's at. So, a lot of uncertainty going into the new school year. And there's a lot of uncertainties, I think, in how this is going to play out, because you have the federal threats to funding and the federal threats to education broadly. My understanding is that the so-called Big Beautiful Bill also expanded school choice. We know that we have school choice that was expanded here in Alabama with the Choose Act last year. That's really starting to kick into gear. So we're talking about tens of millions of dollars are going to be drained from the Education Trust Fund year in, year out, and it's going to keep growing. So we have, that aspect of the budget is going to cause some problems. So it's going to be interesting to see, how things shake out in the legislative session this next year, or maybe the year after. It's going to be hard to know when the bills really come due. But, if you keep passing tax cuts left and right, you have a school choice voucher program sucking away education dollars. You have federal cuts to education funding. And then all of a sudden you have the state budget impacts of this new congressional bill setting up a big tax and budget revenue fight. And so we'll see what happens. But, a lot of uncertainty going into the school year, that's for sure.
Yep. Not good. Not good. Let's get to Boss Watch, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We'll take calls at the start of overtime. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857 if you'd like to call in. We'll take your call, 844-899-8857. So Boss Watch is a segment that we try to do every week where we take a look. The biggest part of Boss Watch comes from the federal government itself. We take press releases from the Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division, which tracks wage theft cases, things like this. We also track the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which, they'll put out press releases about employers that, violate safety regulations and put their employees at risk. And there were no press releases from either the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, from the Wage and Hour Division, from the EPA, from the EEOC, any of these agencies that every week we track and look for stories from the South. There were none this week. Zero. Which is great news, because that just means all the bosses aren't breaking the law anymore.
They were on their best
behavior last week. Yes, no boss in the South stole money from their workers. No boss in the South last week sexually harassed their employees or put people in harm's way, even though we know for a fact that multiple people across the South died on the job last week. None of them was because of any employer negligence or incompetence or anything like that. And so that's just great news. That's great news. It's not great news because that's obviously not what it means. What it means is that the federal government is not being as strict with its enforcement as it used to be. And part of that is just because it doesn't have the resources. There are not as many employees at OSHA as there were only 6 months ago. There are not as many employees at the EEOC as there were only 6 months ago. And so, so we're having to get some of these stories from other places and highlight some other things. And so there was a story out of Mississippi that was reported on by Mississippi Today. They reported that some residents of a small community in the Mississippi Delta say they fear their health might be at risk after a train derailed and spilled a hazardous chemical compound that burned for hours. Part of a Canadian National Railway train went off the tracks on Saturday in Glendora, about halfway between Memphis, Tennessee, and Jackson, Mississippi. The derailment prompted a temporary evacuation of the village after a tank car containing benzene caught on fire. Desiree Simmons and Diamond Hoskins said they were leaving work at an Emmett Till museum when they realized they had to take their families to safety. The derailment occurred nearby. We came out of the building and all we heard was a boom, and the boom was a couple of feet down from where we was, and all we saw was black smoke, Simmons told Mississippi Today. Benzene is used in several products, including detergents and plastics. Symptoms of benzene poisoning include drowsiness, fast or irregular heartbeat, tremors, and headaches. Local fire departments worked several hours to extinguish the flames, according to the Tallahatchie County newspaper, the Sun Sentinel. The Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality built a berm around the tank car to contain the spillage and firefighting liquids. Employees of the Department of Environmental Quality, the State Health Department, Canadian National Railway, and the National Transportation Safety Board have been on site in Glendora, a rural community of about 140 residents. No buildings or homes were damaged, but the derailment damaged the main water line, which has since been repaired. Glendora was put under a boil water notice, a common practice after water lines break and temporarily lose pressure. Hoskins said people from CN gathered residents in Glendora on Monday and gave each family... Are you ready for what they gave each family, Adam? What do you think? What do you think the railway gave each family after they potentially poisoned their water? And remember, it's a community of 140 people, so it's not even like that many people. Like, I have the capacity to give 140 people a small gift myself as an individual, right? It would be a very small gift, but like 140 people is not. How many? How much? What do you think that this huge international rail company?
Maybe they wrote them like a $500 check or something.
Maybe a $500 check. That would be something. That would be a $500 check to 140 individuals, and presumably each individual is not their own family, right? And it said they gave each family this thing, so maybe that's 20 families. So a $500 check would be like $1,000 or no, $10,000. $10,000. Maybe that would be the total. Well, no, you would be wrong. They give each family $100, not a check, not cash, a Walmart gift card.
Oh my God. Wow.
It's just crazy.
Wow.
I mean, it's like almost just don't even do it. Like, I mean, I guess, it's something, but that's...
They can go get some Tylenol for their poisoning.
Bonkers. Since returning home on Tuesday, both Simmons and Hoskins say that they and their children experienced headaches, fatigue, and other symptoms. Both said they plan to visit a doctor soon, and both are worried about their family's health. Mayor Johnny B. Thomas said he believes the evacuation began too late and ended too soon, and the Glendora community is not involved enough in the response. They did not evacuate us in a timely manner and in an urgent manner, as it should have been with this type of chemical exposure. In a statement to Mississippi Today, the Department of Environmental Quality said air monitoring began promptly after the incident, and there have been no detectable levels of benzene found, and air quality in the community remains at safe levels. Therefore, initial evacuation orders have been lifted. The department said air monitoring continues as a precaution, and we will release any information where there is a threat to public health or the environment. The railroad company directed Mississippi Today to the National Transportation Safety Board for comment, and the board said it will release a preliminary report within 30 days. So there you go. We have another story from Labor Lab. They just released a new report titled One-Sided Reporting, the Growing Reporting Gap Between Required Annual Union versus Employer and Persuader Filings, and OLMS compliance efforts continue to widen. The report, which analyzes 2024 non-filing data as of June 30th, 2025, for a third consecutive year, reveals a stark and growing disparity in reporting compliance between labor organizations and employer/persuader organizations. Labor Lab's comprehensive analysis integrates data from 3 government-conducted studies: the recently released 2025 Government Accountability Office report on union filings, the 2024 Department of Labor's Inspector General report, and a 1984 U.S. House of Representatives subcommittee report. This first-ever triangulation of data sets provides irrefutable evidence of a significant and widening reporting gap. The key findings from the report were improved union compliance. The GAO study highlights a 10% improvement in on-time union report filings over a 5-year period. They also found abysmal employer and persuader non-compliance. They say that in stark contrast, documentation from the Department of Labor's own Inspector General reveals a consistently dismal on-time filing rate for persuader consultants and conspicuous absence of enforcement. While OLMS has successfully implemented voluntary compliance programs to improve union on-time filing, comparable initiatives for employer and persuader reporting deficiencies have been conspicuously absent, despite the smaller population size and reduced resource requirements. So there you go. Not good. You can check that out, laborlab.us. Some more from Labor Lab. Union Busters. This segment of Boss Watch is sponsored by Labor Lab. They're an employer watchdog organization committed to safeguarding the right to organize through unions, collective bargaining, and mutual aid. They do this by combing through reports that Union Busters are required to file with the Department of Labor. Here are the new filings from last week. The Tustin Group hired the Cummings Group. They did not provide a compensation rate. American Rock Products hired Labor Consulting Group for almost $400,000 $400 an hour. Alro Steel Corporation hired labor management associates at $324 an hour. And Medics Ambulance Service hired Davis, Grimm, Payne, and Mara at $440 an hour. I mean, can you imagine being in a local community and hearing that your ambulance service is spending over $400 an hour to keep their workers from forming a union? I would be so livid at that waste of the community's resources. But what do I know? I'm just a little guy. That's going to be it for the first half of our program this week. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We got a great second half lined up for you. We're going to be talking to Jordan Barab again about some of the stuff coming out from OSHA and the Department of Labor, so you're going to want to check that out. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook at The Valley Labor Report. Again, if you'd like to call in, that phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. If you don't find us online, though, we appreciate you sticking around for the radio part of the program, and we'll see you next week. All right. We're off the radio now. Appreciate everybody staying tuned. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
in the South. Coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to give us a call, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Folks, we're on TikTok now and Twitch, TVLR FM. You can find us on TikTok and Twitch, TVLR FM. And we're streaming live on TikTok and Twitch right now, just as we're streaming live on YouTube and Facebook.
That's right.
So we're
moving on up.
Yeah,
moving
we're moving
on up.
That's right.
I think we're setting up a Discord as well.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I don't know if any folks listening are on Discord or they're interested in that, but we're working on that. That's another way folks can maybe stay in touch with us and give us tips for stories to talk about on Saturday. We'd love that. So yeah, just trying to do what we can to keep this project growing and keep the momentum. We're happy with where things are going. We're really, proud of how far it's come. I mean, it's been 5 years since you and David Story started this thing, and it's come a long way. We've got, quite a bit more reach from where we started, and I'm just blown away by the people we've talked to, honestly. We have talked to some really amazing people, just rank and file workers, labor leaders and organizers, all sorts of policy experts and historians and journalists and even some politicians. We've had some interesting guests with politicians, some interesting segments with some of those. We've debated folks on the air,
including politicians. We debated politicians.
Yes,
that guy who thinks you ought to be thrown in a cage for 6 months if you spit at police officers.
Yeah, we've had those. So it's been an interesting ride. So yeah, we're just trying to grow it and expand to new audiences. And so, something you can do is just like and share and subscribe and all that stuff. Give us reviews on the podcast app. Like if you haven't done that, go on Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts, give us a 5-star review. Little stuff like that. It really does help. It helps get the word out, and we'd love for you to tell more folks about this project and about this program. There's not a lot of stuff quite like it in the South, at least. There's a lot of labor radio shows and labor talk shows. There's a lot of left-wing politics shows, but there's not a lot of labor-focused talk shows here in the South. And there are very few that are doing what we do, which is broadcast on, terrestrial radio as well as online on the podcast and YouTube and Facebook. And we also try to make it accessible to folks by clipping stuff throughout the week for YouTube. So if there's like a specific, guest spot or interview that you're interested in, or a specific segment we had, you can go in, you can search for that, you can find that. So we try to make it as accessible as we can to folks. We don't charge for the content that we put out to people. And we're excited to be on Means TV as well. So welcome to any folks who are tuning in this morning through Means TV.
Yeah, Means TV is a really cool project, and you can subscribe to Means TV at means.tv, promo code TVLR for 20% off your first month, or 20% off an annual subscription if you get it there. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got some good chats. GM says, I'm a shop steward for the Teamsters and also a veteran. While I'm a diehard union in many aspects, I have seen and see that we do overspend grossly on projects and government contracts. In the military, we would pay $600 for a flick, which holds magazines, grenade, med packs, etc. Same thing costs $150 to $200 when bought without government contracts. I mean, that's like... And then it says we need to find a way to pay people what they are worth while still being fiscally responsible and having true respect for the tax dollars that our citizens pay. I agree with what you said there, but government contracts being more than they should be is like a different question than project labor agreements on construction projects, right?
Correct. Yeah, especially when you're talking about the military-industrial complex, which is rife with... I don't know. Some would say waste, fraud, and abuse. But, you know, I do agree. I think that's a separate subject. And I think the message, though, like, and I think where we have common ground probably is that we want to see our tax dollars used for the public good, right? We want to we want to know that when we pay taxes and the government decides to spend those dollars, that it's being put towards something positive and it's like actually helping the situation. And so that's what, you know, really sticks out with me in project labor agreements is like, why wouldn't we want our investment of tax dollars supporting workers, supporting the people who are doing the work, right? Who are building these projects? Why wouldn't we want them to have decent wages and decent benefits? Why wouldn't we want them to have safe working conditions and you know, solid training requirements? It just makes sense, right? Like we have an opportunity with public investments to lift the floor for everybody, right? Yeah. Because that's something else is like, you know, if you're a non-union construction worker and you can see the difference, right? You can see for yourself how much safer and better it is under a PLA or, you know, under a union environment. That really increases the competition, right? And I think, to your point earlier, Senator Britt was complaining about competitiveness, but it really, you know, it forces the companies to be competitive to attract quality workers,
right?
Which is something that, of course, you know, folks like Britt and Tuberville are not interested in doing. They don't want the companies to have to outbid each other to, you know, recruit and retain good workers. They're looking at a model that's just like pay them the least you can get away with because hopefully they'll be so desperate they'll take anything.
Right.
And that's kind of where they want us, especially in the South, is to just be so desperate for whatever crumbs we can get. You know, that's a lot of times the mentality we deal with in union campaigns out here in the South is a lot of folks are just grateful to have whatever crappy job they've got. And they know it could be better. They know it's not good enough, but they also are scared. They're scared that, you know, the alternative is even worse. And they're scared to make trouble, you know, and mess up anything with this status quo that, again, they know is not good enough, but they're just scared that the alternative is just going to be worse. And I think a lot of folks are in crappy jobs that's still probably the best crappy job they've had.
Yeah.
And that's a tough situation to be in. And that's where, you know, the real collective action and collective strength comes in and building those muscles of collective action.
Steve says, I'll be at IBEW when the AFL-CIO bus tour comes to Atlanta on Tuesday.
Cool.
Would love for
That's
you
really
to
cool.
Leave us a voicemail or call in and talk to us about the event. Would love to hear about that. Huntsville Dim Worker says, props to the South Koreans. Gus says, SK is Samsung. Okay. I thought it was a different company, but maybe not. Comrade Obbs says, solidarity. Vonda says, y'all are too kind. Love you, brothers. Love you, too, sister. Jacob says, really cool guest. Yeah, I always enjoy talking to Tim. He's a good guy. And I was, you know, I mean, listeners to the show know I'm a bit of a Southern partisan. And so it was really cool seeing, you know, such an obviously Southern guy be the UAW representative to South Korea. That made me proud. I was very happy about that. Vonda says, Tuberville cannot be the Alabama governor. Yeah, unfortunately, he's basically already governor-elect. Huntsville Dim Worker said, hashtag Senator Tubberhead. Quirky Geek Girl said, is he running? Tuberville's vile. Yes, he is running. Yes, he is vile. And yes, he will probably be the governor. Jacob Jones says, if Britt cared, she would have made a stink during the BBB instead of voting during the BBV voting instead of after the fact. This is just CYA. Yeah, I agree. Gus, regarding the Boss Watch, says bosses were on their best behavior. Let's see. Jones says, as strict, more likely they've taken their hands off the wheel entirely. Yeah, you know, I mean, there are a bunch of federal workers who want to do good, and so I would, you know, and we've been seeing some stuff continue to come out, so it's not like they've taken the hands off the wheel entirely, but that's definitely what the administration would like you to do.
Right. Well, and I think the concern is like the higher up you go, the less concerned they are. Right. Like I agree to your point, Jacob. There's a lot of folks who are doing inspections and are trying to do the best they can with the environment they're in. But what about their boss or their boss's boss? Are they actually in for the mission to protect working people? Yeah, probably not.
Right. We've got Jordan Barab on the line. Jordan Barab is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Labor at the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Jordan, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
Really glad to have you. I have, like I said last time that you were on, I feel like I knew about your newsletter kind of peripherally for years, and just over the last 6 months or so, I've been paying closer attention to it, and it's just always something so great about that. I mean, well, it's not great. It's actually terrible, the stuff that you're telling me on your newsletter. But it's important and, very informative and helps me understand better what's going on. So before we talk about, some of the news items, can you tell people a little bit about your newsletter and maybe where they can go to find it?
Yeah, my newsletter is called Confined Space. You can find it at jordanbarab.com. I've been writing it off and on since 2003, so over 20 years. And basically, it's got a few purposes to kind of let workers particularly, but also politicians and journalists know what's happening in the world of workplace safety and health. What kind of attacks that workers are facing, particularly from the current Congress and the president. A little background into the history of some of the the politics and the history of OSHA and occupational safety and health, and what people can do to fight the attacks that workers are facing now from corporate America, as well as Republicans in Congress and the White House.
Right.
I also do, the other thing I do is, to the extent I can, I list every worker I can find that was killed in the last week on the job. There are about 100 workers killed every week on the job in this country. I have over 100 Google searches. I can usually only get about 20 or 25 of those. So that just shows you not only are a lot of people getting killed in the workplace, but people don't know about most of them because most of them never get in the press.
It really is a sad state of affairs, and we've been doing a newsletter called Boss Watch for a while. That's like a similar sort of a similar reasoning. But what we've always done with Boss Watch is we have taken press releases from OSHA, the Wage and Hour Division, the EEOC, and sharing some of the conclusive cases where bosses have been found to have been, liable or responsible for a worker's death or injury, or for stealing from workers, or for sexually harassing or discriminating against workers and things like this. And, I can't say with 100% confidence, but I'm relatively certain that I don't think we went 1 week during the Biden administration where there wasn't at least one story from OSHA, the Wage and Hour Division, or the EEOC. And this week is at least, I think, the third week during the Trump administration after they started doing it. We had that first 3 months where they weren't doing anything at all for 3 months. And then, they started doing it again. And I think 3 times since they've started doing it again, there have been just nothing. And so, does that mean that bosses are just on their best behavior and their actions are not killing workers, they're not stealing from workers, they're not harassing workers, or is something else going on?
Well, I mean, just as many workers are getting killed, if not more. We don't really have the statistics, lags, but you certainly just as many workers are getting killed and hurt in the workplace. And we think OSHA is still enforcing, as far as we know. It takes often 6 months for an OSHA citation to come out. The difference, particularly in this administration, is they're not proud of any kind of enforcement. They do, so they don't publicize it. When we were at OSHA during the Obama administration, we made it a point to issue more press releases to really spread the word. That OSHA was on the job and that we were coming after you if you were endangering workers. And we issued a lot more press releases. We issued more in-depth press releases. We used some more hard-hitting language in the press releases because studies have shown that press releases are effective in changing behavior, not just of the employers in the press releases, but of other employers who read them as well. And this administration, like the first Trump administration, is issuing very few, if any, press releases or any kind of announcements about the enforcement actions they're doing, which is really kind of robbing, workers, particularly in the American public, of the knowledge that there is a health and safety agency here that is enforcing the law and protecting workers. The business community hates press releases. They used to tell us, some of the lawyers used to tell us that the employers didn't really care about OSHA fines, because they're so low. But what they really didn't want to happen was to wind up in an OSHA press release. So they're making sure that doesn't happen, that nobody is actually embarrassed about the mistreatment or killing of workers.
That and that is something that is worth folks understanding. I think that the fines are so low that the business lawyers were like, yeah, whatever, fine us, but just don't talk about what we did in the press. And that leads us to one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. There's a piece that you released last week on July the 14th, OSHA penalties, how low can you go? And the bottom line is that OSHA is lowering its penalties. Can you talk to us about by how much are they lowering their penalties? Under what circumstances are they lowering their penalties? And why is that? I mean, we just talked about that OSHA penalties are so low that businesses don't care if they get them or not. So I guess it's worth, telling us what the status quo is and then where we're going.
Right. So Congress sets the maximum penalty for OSHA violations. For a serious violation, one that's capable of causing death or serious physical harm, the maximum penalty is about $16,500. And it's about 10 times that much for what's called a willful violation, which is where the employer has knowledge that he's breaking the law and is just indifferent to the fact that he may be endangering workers. But so most OSHA citations are the serious ones with the 16,500 maximum. But there are all kinds of reasons that OSHA actually reduces those penalties. So the average OSHA penalty for a serious violation, even though the maximum is 16,500, the average is only around 4,000. And that's for federal OSHA. About half the states run their own OSHA programs. And for those states, the average is only about $2,500. So the actual penalties are very low. Now, OSHA is required by law to consider three different things. They're required to consider the size of the worker, the size of the employer, the good faith of the employer, and the enforcement history of the employer, and consider those factors for reductions in the penalty, which OSHA does. The other thing is OSHA has an incentive to bargain penalties down from the initial citation, because employers by law are not required to fix the problem until, if they contest the citation, they're not required to fix the problem until the contest is resolved, which can be many months or even years. So OSHA has an incentive, because they want to fix the problem in the workplace. They have an incentive to bargain to reduce the penalty down to the point where the employer won't contest it. So that's why the actual penalties are much lower. But they're not low enough because, as you mentioned, the Department of Labor just issued a press release last week saying that they were going to reduce those penalties even more. They're going to, for example, for small employers, right now they are eligible for employers between 1 and 10 employees. They are eligible for a 70% discount reduction in their penalties, and they expanded that to not just employers of 10 or fewer, but up to employers of 25 or fewer employees. So they expanded that reduction. They also, OSHA also has a reduction for quick fix. If an OSHA's inspector's on site, they say there's something wrong over there. If the employer fixes it right away, then they can get like a 15% discount. Quick used to mean within 24 hours, either when the OSHA inspector is there or within 24 hours of the inspection. They just expanded that to potentially 2 weeks is considered now a quick fix. Probably the most troubling thing is OSHA has a reduction for history. And what that used to mean was that if an employer had been inspected at all during the last 5 years and no violations had been identified, then the employer, could get a reduction in the penalty. They just changed that. So instead of only applying to employers who had been inspected and had a clean record for the last 5 years, they now expanded that to employers who have never been inspected before. So if you've never been inspected and you get cited, you're still eligible for the history reduction, which is ridiculous because even now OSHA is only able to inspect. If OSHA was to inspect every workplace in the country just once, it would take them 186 years, which is a long time. But the president's budget proposal for OSHA significantly reduces the agency's enforcement budget and the agency's the number of inspections the agency's expected to conduct. And the AFL-CIO estimates that if those Trump's budget is adopted, it would take over 2.5 centuries, something like 260 years. To investigate every workplace in the country. So that means that very few employers are actually ever going to be inspected, right? And yet, just by virtue of the fact that OSHA doesn't have enough staff to inspect every, or even a large number of employers, those employers who are never inspected get a reduction. If they're finally cited, which is absolutely absurd.
Is there any way to you mentioned that they don't like the press releases. Is there any way to go into like the OSHA database and see the information that is contained in the press releases even without the statement being released?
There is a way. OSHA does not make it very easy, though. There are databases kind of buried, in the OSHA website that you can get to figure that out. To figure out, what's, the citations that have been issued. So that is possible. And actually, during the first Trump administration, where they refused to issue any press releases for the first few months, I used to do that. I used to kind of issue my own OSHA press releases again on my newsletter. I haven't done that yet this time. But yeah, you can do it. OSHA makes it very difficult, and it's also difficult because you can't figure out from that where OSHA didn't act or where they didn't issue a citation. So it's very hard to get that information out. A lot of the best information is not really publicly accessible and has to be FOIA'd.
Gotcha. There was another one that came out recently. You put this piece out on Confined Space a couple of weeks ago, and it was about a new OSHA regulation regarding entertainers. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, yeah, OSHA, well, I should say the Department of Labor issued a number of dozens of deregulatory actions where they basically weakened current regulations, not just with OSHA, but Wage and Hour and other agencies. In terms of OSHA, there were about 25 areas where they weakened regulations. Now, a lot of those are not really significant because they were very old, and this kind of just updates them because other supportive standards have been issued since then. But there were a few that were very significant, and the one you referred to was related to what's known as the General Duty Clause. So OSHA has a lot of standards for various things: fall protection, trenches, chemicals. But where OSHA doesn't have a standard, like for heat, for example, which they're allegedly working on now, they can use the General Duty Clause, which simply requires the employer to provide a safe and healthful workplace. And if OSHA can establish that despite the fact there's no standard, there is a hazard there, a serious hazard there, that is a recognized hazard and can be fixed. There's what they call a reasonable means of abatement. Then OSHA can still cite under the General Duty Clause. Well, back in 2010, there was a whale trainer at SeaWorld who was killed by a killer whale, dragged her into the water, basically, it was disemboweled her. It was a horrible thing. And this is in front of the whole audience. And it turned out that this whale had a history of killing trainers. It was, they should have known that they did know that this was a dangerous whale, and we cited them. And that citation went all the way up to the court, the D.C. District Court, and they found in favor of OSHA by a 2-to-1 vote. And the one that voted against it was our current Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh, Brett Kavanaugh. Sorry, name slipped my mind. Brett Kavanaugh, who basically said that that OSHA should not be in the business of citing sports or entertainment. I mean, they kind of conflating sports and entertainment. Sports being, OSHA should not be issuing citations for tackling even though workers get hurt, or for throwing fastballs even though they can hit a worker. And, OSHA doesn't do that. But he also expanded that to entertainment. And the fact is, you have a lot of entertainment workers, not just the, Don Brancho, who is the SeaWorld trainer, but, Broadway, we had cited a number of hazards on Broadway because workers were getting hurt there. Cirque du Soleil, there were a number of, of entertainers getting hurt there. And OSHA doesn't have standards. We don't have OSHA doesn't have standards about whale training, and it doesn't have standards about acrobatics. But, nevertheless, we found many instances where the employer should have known about the problem. It was a serious hazard. There were certainly many ways that the employer could have fixed that problem. And we cited them under the general duty clause. Well, Brett Kavanaugh decided that you can't use the general duty clause. He didn't think you should be using the general duty clause, and not just for sports, but also for entertainment. And again, he lost that. But now, here we are, over a decade later, and suddenly this weird concept has risen from the dead. And OSHA issued this interpretation, they call it, basically saying that the general duty clause can no longer be used for sports, which it never was, or for entertainment purposes. So, that is a problem. I mean, it's going to be a problem, for example, entertainers, who are down in Disney World, in a very hot Orlando, Florida, who may be exposed to serious heat hazards. Well, without a standard, OSHA could normally use its general duty clause, but now because of this, new deregulatory action, OSHA wouldn't be able to cite Disney World, even if an employee died of heat stroke, because they couldn't use the general duty clause anymore.
Wow. What's the latest on the heat rule? The Biden administration was trying to push through some standard heat protection stuff. This has been a growing problem for workers across the country, but particularly in the South where it's hotter. Heat deaths have been increasing significantly over the last several years, and the Biden administration was trying to put through a standard rule for heat protection. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, as you said, the Biden administration issued an official proposal, fairly strong proposal. It wasn't perfect, but it was very good. That required, water, rest, and shade, and specified the amount of water, how frequently the breaks had to be, as well as training, emergency response, and acclimatization, so workers could had time to get accustomed to the heat. So the next, once a proposal is issued, the next step is to hold hearings. First of all, have a written comment period, then hearings. And the written comment period started during the Biden administration. The Trump administration continued that and held the hearings a couple of weeks ago. And an OSHA hearing is not just a one-day hearing. This went on for 2.5 weeks, and anybody can testify if they want to. So they seem to be moving forward. We were sort of surprised that they were moving forward, but the question is, what's going to happen now? And what we saw during these hearings was the industry obviously is opposing OSHA's standard, proposed standard. They want what's known as a performance standard, which means that OSHA basically says, you need to protect yourself, protect workers from heat, and maybe provide heat rest and shade, but doesn't really specify how much water, how frequently the rest breaks have to be taken, nor how long workers need to take to become acclimatized to the heat. Kind of just say, you figure it out for yourselves. And they used, the state of Nevada has issued a standard. But those kind of standards, and particularly the state of Nevada, is pretty much unenforceable. For example, well, it's not enforceable because of the language in it, but it also has problems like it only requires employers to provide rest breaks after a worker starts feeling symptoms. It doesn't say how much water needs to be provided. There are all kinds of problems with it, aside from the fact that the language in it makes it kind of unenforceable because there are no real requirements in it. So we'll see what happens with this. There are two directions it could go. OSHA could just sit on it for the next 3.5 years, and do nothing, which is probably the most likely thing, and usually what Republican administrations do when OSHA, for OSHA standards, they basically don't issue OSHA standards. Republicans. The other thing they could do, and this is a great fear, is that they could decide to issue a very weak standard, similar to the Nevada standard. So we're kind of sitting back and waiting to see what they might do. Now, in order to issue the final standard, OSHA has to go through all the written comments, all the hearing comments. They have to, justify, why they accepted them or didn't accept them, and then they have to rewrite the standard and, justify why they did that. So this is going to be a long process. We're probably not going to see anything for, likely 2 years, if we see anything at all out of this administration. But again, people are a little nervous that they will try to slip through some kind of very weak standard and then decide, job is done.
Something that has been very frustrating for me is the juxtaposition between watching the businesses in these OSHA hearings and talking about the paperwork requirements and how this is so onerous and such a difficult thing, when really, I mean, the crux of the rule, it's a strong rule in a sense that there are requirements and it's enforceable, but the crux of the rule is, as I understand it, is that like between 80 and 90 degrees, an employer just has to have a plan. It doesn't even say, I don't think, exactly what the plan has to be. You just have to recognize that there's an increased risk from 80 to 90 degrees, and then above 90 degrees is where the requirements really kick in, and that's that you have to give a break every 2 hours, 15 minutes paid water break, which is not a lot. If you've done yard work in the summer in the South, you need, that taking a break every 2 hours is kind of the minimum of what you really need to be doing for your safety. And I imagine that I'm like there's a very small group of people that are seeing these two things happening at the same time. But there's the business folks who are complaining about the paperwork stuff, and the politicians relative to this OSHA heat standard. And then there are the politicians that these businesses fund talking about how it's fine for poor people, individual poor people, to have increased paperwork requirements to be able to get health care. And and that if they don't do that, then there's like a moral problem with them and they deserve not to have health care and to die and things like that. Have you noticed that it's just happening at the same time, and it makes it so clear how none of this stuff is like a consistent concern for the Republicans or for these business owners? It's just that they want to make life easier for business owners and for them to have more money, and for poor and working people to have less, and for life to be harder. Am I reading too much into that, or what do you make of that?
No, I mean, there are several complaints that Republicans and the business community make against every single OSHA standard. One of them is their so-called one-size-fits-all, and the second one is too much paperwork. The irony is that this standard requires very little paperwork. I mean, your heat program has to be written down, which shouldn't be a problem. And then there's a few little record-keeping things that the employers have to do, but there really isn't any kind of record-keeping burden. But as you say, as far as Republicans are concerned, paperwork and red tape is terrible if you're an employer, but it's necessary, if you're a worker or someone that's trying to get Medicaid. So yeah, it's a total double standard there.
Are there any other of these deregulatory announcements from the Department of Labor that we should be keeping an eye out for that we haven't touched on already?
Yeah, there's one that, for example, no longer requires medical exams for certain kind of respirators, which is problematic because a lot of workers, especially older workers, may not have the lung capacity to wear respirators, any kind of respirators, especially negative pressure, which is where you draw the air. You have to work to draw the air through the respirator to inhale it. So they're getting rid of that for certain types of respirators. The other most troubling one is one that deals with lighting in construction. which basically says, the basic reasoning for that is, everybody knows you need enough light to work, so why do we need a regulation that requires that? Well, you wouldn't believe, if you look back through OSHA history, there are a lot of workers who have been killed, falling through holes in the floor and other hazards because of poor lighting. So this is, a very necessary standard. And something that, if they get rid of it, will lead to the, more injuries and more deaths in the workplace. So there are some we're particularly looking at closely because they will harm workers. They will kill workers.
The last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is this piece that you put out on confined space. It was written by Stephen Knight, analyzing a recent report by I think WorkSafe is the title of the, or is the name of the organization.
Yeah, there was a study in WorkSafe publicized through a study. Yes.
Yes, and so Stephen Knight wrote an article for Confined Space about this, and the premise is basically that increased immigration enforcement increases injuries and employer non-compliance with OSHA regulations. Can you talk to us about some of the findings of this study and how that connection is made?
Yeah, I mean, so we know that immigrant workers, particularly undocumented workers, first of all, they are covered by OSHA. OSHA, the law requires OSHA to protect the health and safety of every worker, whether they're documented or not documented. And OSHA doesn't even check your citizenship or your documentation status when they go into a workplace. But obviously, especially now, what we're seeing, is workers are going to be much more intimidated from exercising their rights under OSHA. I mean, immigrant workers have always been, somewhat less reluctant, to exercise those rights. Most of them are not unionized. They don't have access to education about the health and safety hazards they're facing. They have no idea what OSHA is, and they're very nervous about government agents coming onto their work site, and that's under normal circumstances. Now, obviously, they're much more vulnerable. If they complain even to their employer about health and safety issues, much more vulnerable to the employer calling ICE, to say come round these guys up. Much less willing to talk to any kind of government official. Although we don't think OSHA is actually turning undocumented immigrants in. I mean, obviously, a lot of agencies they're using Social Security records, all kinds of Medicaid records to find immigrants, undocumented immigrants. So obviously, there's a legitimate fear there that they will call ICE and be deported. And the less they're going to complain about it, and the more intimidated they are about contacting authorities and complaining, the more workers are going to get hurt. And that's what we also have seen. The study also shows that not only are workers filing fewer complaints, but more of them are suffering injuries and deaths, among immigrant workers, as and kind of correlated to the increase in immigration enforcement. So, what that means is that, basically work is not only more dangerous for immigrant workers, but it's more dangerous for everyone. Because even if you're not an immigrant, you go into a workplace that's unsafe and you complain to your employer or you complain to OSHA, there's nothing to keep the employer from saying, fine, get the hell out of here. I'm going to hire some immigrants who won't complain so much. So, everybody's jobs are more at risk. Everybody's jobs become more dangerous, because of this kind of uncontrolled immigration enforcement.
And just a couple of these numbers from the study: in workplaces with many Hispanic workers following immigration enforcement, you had a 50% decrease in worker complaints and a 30% increase in worker injuries. In workplaces with few Hispanic workers, the change in worker complaints looks like something like less than 5%, 5% less complaints, and like 2 or 3% increase in injuries. And the number of safety violations also increased. Before immigration enforcement, looks like it was about 10, and after, they saw a 150% increase. And another finding is that unionized workers were largely shielded from the increase in barriers to complain about health and safety. So, that's really, another reason to join a union is that, this kind of stuff is going to have less of a effect on you. So, Really fascinating stuff. Definitely recommend folks reading the study and reading the article on jordanbarab.com/confined space. Jordan, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Is there anything else that you'd want to leave our audience with before we let you go?
Well, I think we need to look at the whole picture here. When we talked about some of the attacks on OSHA, the other thing that this administration has done is basically eliminate the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. Aside from some very small parts that got a lot of publicity, and NIOSH is the only agency in the federal government that does occupational safety and health research. They do an enormous amount of research, an enormous amount of education. They are responsible for protecting and surveilling coal miners who are seeing a significantly increased incidence of black lung disease because of their silica exposures. So the loss of NIOSH will have a heavy impact on workplace safety and health, not only this year but in future years, because they also provide educational grants that provide the pipeline for health and safety staff. They're also trying to get rid of the Chemical Safety Board, which does in-depth root cause investigations of chemical incidents. I mean, investigations that neither OSHA nor EPA has the capacity to do. So what we're seeing is an all-sides onslaught, attack on workplace safety in this country and community safety, quite frankly. We'll see what happens. And I mentioned also the budget. There's significant budget cuts for OSHA, significant budget cuts for MSHA, the Mine Safety Health Administration, and again, almost the complete elimination of NIOSH. So, it's dark times here for workplace safety.
Jordan Barab, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Labor at the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, and happy to be here anytime.
All right. I'm sure we'll get him on the program again soon.
That was great.
Always love talking to him. And, really, folks, y'all, jordanbarab.com/confined to space. If you're not reading it, you should be. It's a great, that's one of, I don't visit very many websites regularly. Just go type in the URL and see what's on it. And I do with Confined Space. So check it out. We got another guest on the line. We have David Allen from the Roswell Hub. David, welcome to the program. Oh, he's still joining? Okay. He may be having some difficulty with his internet. I'm not sure. And my phone is dead right now, so I can't text him.
Oh no!
Rip. So hopefully he'll be able to get on. But we're going to be talking to him about this UPS buyout situation. David Allen is a UPS Teamster in Atlanta, host of the Roswell Hub on YouTube. If you work at UPS, you know about the Roswell Hub already, I'm pretty sure, and you should be listening to it. Good stuff there, for sure. So, let me know once he is fully joined. Oh, he may be calling in instead. Is it from I think his is a 404 area code? Okay, yeah, that's him. Yeah. Okay, great. David, are you on the phone? Can you hear me?
Yeah. What's up, Jacob?
Great.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you taking the time. David Allen is a UPS Teamster in Atlanta, host of the Roswell Hub on YouTube with Greg Kerwood. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. I'm sure folks who work at UPS are already listening to you, so definitely, if you're not, go ahead and check it out. UPS is offering a buyout to employees. We talked about it a little bit last week, but some more news has come out, and the offer itself is has actually been released, and so we know the details. What are they?
Oh, $1,800 for every year of service with a $10,000 minimum. Across the board, I would say a lot of the drivers are very upset about this. They think it's garbage for the work we do.
$1,800 a year with a $10,000 minimum is the buyout offer. That really is not much. That's when I heard you talking about it on the Roswell Hub, I think you said something like that's like a week of pay. That's if you don't work overtime. I mean, it's really not that much. And so, what do you think UPS's thinking is here on this? Like, why do they think that this is going to be effective for them?
Well, I mean, if you really look at it through their lens and through their eyes, they viewed it as like a plan, like they can't lose, right? I mean, so basically they're doing these buyouts, I guess through their lens. They're like, okay, we're going to do these buyouts and we're going to go to the media and we're going to just pump up this, this whole story. And let me back up, because UPS has been having this whole goal of having better, not bigger. They want to shrink the workforce. They want to shrink the hubs and everything else. So when shareholders hear layoffs and leaner and thinner, profits, whatever, bigger profits with leaner employees, they get excited and they buy more shares. So this is not just UPS. This is just about every company does this, right? So with that being said, it's they thought through their lens they're just going to do this, and even if they offered us scraps, maybe they can get a couple of people to bite, and then they get the story, and then they get some of these higher senior guys to leave, and then they don't have to worry about paying the health and welfare, and then they get a new guy that maybe take his place and have to do the 4-year progression. And so it kind of, so now they're paying somebody half as much for the same work. But in all reality, what I've been seeing through my eyes is like, I mean, we've had people leave and they just don't fill in the spots. And so the people are working even later. So it's very bizarre.
That's what it looks like. I've been seeing online from Teamsters is that rather than, the talk being, oh, wow, I can't get any overtime. I sure wish I had more overtime. There's just not enough work. We're really having a hard time, because there's just so little work. The thing that I hear more often is that we're very short-staffed. There's not enough people at my facility, and I'm constantly being asked to work overtime. Is that your experience? I mean, how are people talking to you about their, the staffing levels at their facilities?
Yeah. So if you work in a big hub, you may see something different because they laid off all these feeder routes, and the people that were in feeder, they go back into package. So now they have an overflow. So a lot of those guys are not experiencing it. But on like most of the hubs, I would say a good 90% chunk of the hubs are seeing the skeleton crew where they're just not hiring people. And like, I'll give you an example for anybody who doesn't work for UPS. My day, sometimes the worst case scenario, I'll wake up at 7, I suit up for work, I drive in, I only live 20 minutes away from work, I go to work, and then by the time I'm done and I get home, it's midnight. So you're not even getting 8 hours of sleep at that point.
Right.
And that's the reality of this job. It's always kind of been this way. It's like ebb and flows. Like not every day is that worst case scenario, but you do have a lot of that where it's so unpredictable, when you come in. And I think that's what frustrates a lot of people about the job. The pay is great. The benefits are great. Everything the union fought for is what's made it so people stick around for it. But if we didn't have those things, oh my God, like we would be turning on employees left and right.
Right. Can you talk to me about what are the 9-5 grievances? Like, isn't there a way that you can opt out of some of this overtime if you'd like to, or am I wrong?
No, well, okay. So yeah, every contract we always try to put more stronger language to get people off and have a good work life balance, right? And the problem is that sometimes the company does honor it. Like the last 3 years, I saw for the most part, a lot of people were getting off before 9.5 hours. And like I, for instance, I don't think I filed any grievances for like 2 years because they were honoring it for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have 8-hour requests where we can request 2 times a month to have an 8-hour day, right? Now the 9/5s, if you work over 9.5 hours 3 times in the week, you get penalty pay, which is triple time essentially for any hours over 9.5 hours. Now, if they keep violating it, I'm just going to give an example. If you go over, if they keep violating, let's just say for like 2 months straight, right? It's really 5 times, but we'll say 2 months. They end up paying you quad. So you get paid 4 times your hours. And it's insane money, but it's funny because right now they act like it doesn't matter.
So anytime if you work more than 3 times in a week over 9.5 hours, you can file a grievance and get paid for triple time for the hours that are over that 9.5 hours in one day. And then you said you can request 2 times in 1 month an 8-hour day?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And
just wanted to make sure
we have these harsh penalties on the company. Oh yeah, no, listen, I'm sorry. In the UPS world, this whole thing's kind of confusing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand. For anybody who doesn't work at UPS, this is a lot to throw at somebody, and it's gotten really complicated. Like the 9/5 language is incredibly complicated, but in long and short, just to make it easy for people, we have all these guardrails in place. We can't tell the company to not deliver stuff, because then we have poor customer service. We may lose customers and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will argue with me on that, but that's just the way we've always operated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, so we've always had these crazy guardrails for penalty pay, where they have to pay all these penalties. So if they violate the 8-hour request, then they have to pay 4 hours of penalty. You know, like I said before, 9/5, you can pay a quad pay. I've had guys get paid over $1,000 in 1 week violation grievance for a quad. And it basically ends up being a lot of money. You can make a lot of money, but the thing is like those guardrails in place because these guys don't want to be out there that late. It is a very exhausting job, and people, unless you've done it, it's hard to explain like what it puts you through.
No doubt. I mean, it sounds like a lot. I wouldn't want to do it. And so this was rolled out. There was like some talk about it in the press, and then the Teamsters pushed back against it. And it was kind of initially looking like, okay, well, UPS has backed off and they're not going to go through with this. But then ultimately it was implemented, and people found out, $1,800 per year of service with a minimum of $10,000. The Teamsters say this is illegal. This offer, the whole program, is not legal. What is the case that the Teamsters have there?
Well, they're saying it's an extra contractual agreement. So we have in our contract, there cannot be any extra contractual agreements outside of the contract. And, some people may argue and say, because I think in 2023, there was buyouts for the pilots, but the Teamsters never interjected on that. And I don't know what was going on at the time. It was it was on the news and stuff like that. But in the end of the day, like this one, the Teamsters are interjecting on it, and they are saying it's a contract violation, and they want to push for it. So, I mean, I think it's a fair case to make. You are making an agreement outside of the contract, and
right.
If that's the case they want to make, I think they have every right to push for it.
And, the reason that you would want a clause like that inside of a contract is just because, if you have the company going around to individual employees and making these side deals, it undermines, the validity of the contract and the strength of the contract. You want everything to be negotiated through collective bargaining, through those sorts of channels instead of, that's the whole reason that we have a union, is because we decided we want to collectively bargain, and here UPS is trying to go around the collective bargaining process and do something individually, these little side deals. And so that, that makes sense that the Teamsters would want to object to that sidelining of the collective bargaining process. You said that folks are not happy with the offer. Is that right?
Yeah. So I guess, all right. So if you don't mind, let me back up real quick. All right. So when the initial, it was initially announced a couple months ago that they were going to do these buyouts. Then the Teamsters came out with their side. This is an unfair buyout, or it's against the contract. It's illegal. And so then the news press picked it up, and it was a lot of bad PR for UPS, because every news press that came out, it was always buyouts and Teamsters, and how basically the Teamsters were saying this is a legal buyout. And so I thought for a while there they were going to just scrap it, right? Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like the scheduling of things just wasn't there. And then it just out of the blue, they started sending out these letters. And during that time, when people had no idea that it was going to be such a low ball offer, they were getting excited. Mind you, once again, I just told you, there are days that I get up at 7 and go home at midnight, right?
Right.
So when you have a schedule like that, when you live a life like that, day in and day out, you really want to get out of it. And I think that's fair. And so people were thinking, oh, this multi-billion-dollar company is going to pay me $500,000 to leave. I'll take it. And turns to find out, dude, you're going to get maybe $50K if you've been here for 30 years. And after taxes and everything else, you may end up with 27. So it's a slap in the face.
Yeah. Yeah, and so probably not going to be getting just a whole lot of folks with this deal. And so what are the next steps? I saw the Teamsters were telling folks to file grievances locally where they try to roll it out. I guess that's what happens next, right?
Yeah, we're filing grievances and filing charges as well. So that's going to be happening everywhere. But UPS, for whatever reason, they didn't want to sit down and hold back, or at least talk to the Teamsters and hash things out. They just went ahead and pulled the trigger, which I don't know was the right move. I don't think it was, but especially since, as you can tell, not very many people are going to take it to begin with. So why is the juice worth the squeeze? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, David, appreciate you calling in and giving us an update. Definitely folks need to check out the Roswell Hub. Y'all are all UPS all the time, so check it out. Anything else that you wanted to make sure to mention before we let you go?
Yeah, I want to give you a shout out. I've been watching your show for a long time, and I think that you do great work. And, I know the amount of work that you put into this, because I know how much work I put into mine. And it's a labor of love, and, I think I appreciate everything you do.
I appreciate it, brother. Same to you. And we'll
All right. Appreciate you guys. Love you.
Yep. We'll talk to David. Talk to David later. Maybe bring him back on the program to talk about the resolution of this once that gets resolved. So appreciate him calling in. Definitely check out Roswell Hub on YouTube. Did Ben come back down? Okay, you're here. I couldn't. So there's one of the things that went viral last week was a kiss cam video at a Coldplay concert, and it was very funny, and even funnier when you know some of the background, which we'll give you here in a second. But let's watch this video first.
Yeah. Oh, look at these two. All right, come on. You're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy.
There you go. So for folks who are just listening on audio or you're listening to us on the radio, that was the CEO of a tech company or something, astronomer, and his head of HR, both of whom are married. And the person who was standing next to them was like the deputy head of HR, who was at this concert with the two who were having some sort of affair. They were in a very obviously not platonic embrace, the CEO and the head of HR. And so a lot of people have been clowning on them. The CEO put out a statement condemning the kiss cam guy. Which was very funny. He was like, "Oh, it's an invasion of privacy, and to have this violation without my consent or whatever." And there's been some talk about, like, oh, this is like the kind of surveillance state that we live in, indicative of that kind of thing. And getting caught doing an affair on a kiss cam at a concert feels not like a surveillance state. It feels like a throwback to 1990 to me. Like that feels like a very old sort of I got caught cheating story, rather than this kind of dystopia sort of thing. And so I haven't really bought into some of the hyperventilating about it. But we're a union radio program, and we tell you all the time not to trust HR. This is just one more reason not to trust HR, which is not to say that, this is happening at most companies. It's not happening at most companies. And there are no doubt situations where, even the union steward and management, there are things happening there that shouldn't be, that are inappropriate. But, like organizationally, HR is set up for the benefit of the company. HR works for the company. So just generally, you shouldn't trust HR. This is just another reason not to. But Adam, I don't know. Do you have any more thoughts about like just materially and structurally why people should not trust HR?
Well, I just think it's so funny because it really is a metaphor for how that relationship works in practice, right? HR is the boss's right-hand man or right-hand woman, and, they work for the boss. So the boss tells you to go to HR with issues and problems and concerns and questions. They may even say they have an open door and invite you to give such feedback. But you have to be incredibly careful what you say about yourself or others in front of human resources. I think because part of their job, part of why they exist, is to document you and terminate you.
Yeah.
I mean, that is one of the most important functions of the human resources department. And you have to be incredibly careful. I know in my time, as a field rep for a lot of employees, we had a lot of problems dealing with the human resources director and the department broadly. But, it can make or break a relationship between the union and the company as well. Like, I think it's important, obviously, for unions to try to have good working relationships with human resources, like where that's possible. But, we can't ever get it twisted. Like, if you're a worker, you can't trust HR. You just can't trust HR, and you need to be very careful. If you go to HR, it's because it's literally just like the logical step, and you've analyzed the situation, and there's just no way around it. You have to go to HR for something, right? Sometimes you have to, and that's acknowledged, and that's part of the structure of the company or organization a lot of times. But yeah, you just have to be very mindful of that, because they do not work for you. They work for the boss, for the company. And part of that job is to discipline you, should they want to or have evidence to, or are they directed to, right? Yep. So it's crazy, but yeah, the metaphor of that, though, I just love the visual. It's very, very great.
Yes. Another thing that happened last week is the governor of Missouri took away paid sick leave for his constituents. He also stopped them from getting raises in the future. That happened last week when the governor of Missouri repealed or signed the repeal that passed out of the legislature that repealed a ballot measure that would have done several things. It was a suite of kind of pro-worker things. One of the things that it would have done would have given paid sick leave to most employees in Missouri. It would have raised the minimum wage, and it did raise the minimum wage, and tied that minimum wage to inflation. That way, we don't have to have this interminable debate every 3 or 4 years. It's one of the most frustrating things when we all know that inflation continues every year. Our money's worth a little bit more, and so the minimum wage should increase every single year, tying it to inflation. We should just do that, and then we don't have to have this debate all the time. It's crazy. And so the repeal did two things. It did not repeal the initial wage increase, so Missourians did still get that minimum wage increase, but it did repeal the paid sick leave, and it repealed the tying the minimum wage to inflation. So the Missouri governor took away paid sick leave from Missourians and took away future raises. And I just want to remind everybody about the kind of stuff that, what these people think about you. Here is one of the state representatives or state senator or something from Missouri talking during the debate about this bill, talking about the debate of the repeal of this ballot measure and some of the reasons that he doesn't like the ballot measure and what passed. By the way, passed with almost 60% of the vote. Let's listen to this guy.
This is one of those things of the problem with direct democracy. This is exactly what our founders were expressly against when they formed this nation. We're a constitutional republic with individual representation confined by constitutional restraints of what government can and can't do. And for us to think that the founders had in their mind's eye that we would be putting in front of every single voter and every single time with every single policy measure for them to decide whether or not this was good or policy or not, especially when the people casting the ballots for measures such as this, they have no skin in the game whatsoever when it comes to these sorts of measures. No realization of the detriment or the harm that it may cause to their very own bottom dollar, because they may not even understand what these provisions, what these measures would do to their employer. I mean, because at the end of the day, the people, most people casting these votes on these measures, they don't own businesses. They don't understand what's required to meet the bottom line, to keep people employed. We are not a direct democracy, and we got to stop telling our kids that we're a democracy, first and foremost, because we're not a democracy, or we are a Republican form of government. We say the pledge every day. We say to the republic for which it stands, not the democracy for which it stands, and especially not the direct democracy for which it stands. And people can moan and they can groan, but it's the ones that moan and groan are probably not the ones signing the front of the checks that employ the people that are having to bear these costs.
It's really hard not to actually hate people like that. It's not a Christian thing to hate people, and it's not virtuous. I'm trying to get better about, I want to be a good person. I want to be virtuous. I've been going to church a little bit lately, but it is so hard to not actually have hate in my heart for people like that, who say that workers who are getting sick don't have skin in the game because they don't own the businesses, because they're not the ones that are profiting off of the labor of others. then they don't have skin in the game. I mean, it's just a sick sort of, it is such a sick mentality to have that people who work for a living don't have skin in the game because they're not owners and because they don't make their living off of the value that other people create. It's just so gross. And to say that 60% of Missourians, they're too stupid. I mean, literally, he was talking about, oh, well, they don't even know what this does. It's pretty simple what it does, actually. It says that the boss, the people that I work for, the people that I create all the profit for, should give me more. That's what it does, right? And people in Missouri are not, they're not, it's not a huge, like, the median wage over there is not $1 million, right? So their bosses can give them a little bit more. It's just, I don't know how to deal with stuff like that. It's so crazy. But let's listen to the governor, and this was before he signed the repeal. But he was asked if he would sign it, and he had a couple of comments as well. Let's play this clip 3 from the governor.
And another thing I'm interested in is, will you sign the Senate bill that scraps the mandatory sick leave in Proposition A?
Is it the House bill that we just approved this week?
Correct.
Yes. I'll take a look at it, but I'm a big fan of that bill. As I mentioned earlier, it's a huge issue to both small and large business and economic developers. And look, I'm a capitalist in a free market. I do not think that we should allow, in this case, a very liberal group from the East Coast of our country come in and spend millions of dollars to put a question on the ballot that has nothing to do with the input of individually privately owned businesses, and I'm not a big fan of mandates. I think the markets should set what employees get paid and what the compensation are, and I know businesses are very competitive in doing that, and they're always going to try to take care of their employees the best they can so they don't lose them to the business down the street, and that's something individual business owners should decide, not some piece of legislation that was introduced by somebody not even from the state.
Introduced by somebody not even from this state, despite the fact that the people who signed petitions to get it on the ballot were definitionally Missourians. You couldn't have, I couldn't have signed that petition to get it on the Missouri ballot because I don't live in Missouri. Missourians signed a petition to get it on the ballot in the first place, and then Missourians voted by 57%. I mean, if either party got 57% of the vote nationwide, it would be a landslide of, like, biblical proportions. Like, people would be talking about the mandate that candidate had because he got 57% of the vote. I mean, Trump talks about mandates, and he got, like, 49% of the vote, right? 57% of Missourians voted for this piece of legislation, and you've got folks like the state senator talking about, oh, well, our people are just too stupid to know what's good for them. And then you've got the governor talking about, oh, well, they're being manipulated by out-of-state elites or whatever. Somebody in the chat says, yes, won't somebody think of the interests of the poor, vulnerable businesses? They're people too. Yeah, that's right. Somebody else says, if you have a corporate charter granted by the state, the community, that doesn't exist in your so-called free market fantasy land, the privilege of limited liability, why should any owner get that? Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Markets are not, there's actually no such thing as a free market. That's a myth. That doesn't exist. Markets are set up by the state. Gus says, apparently all he was learning in school was the Pledge of Allegiance, that state senator, yeah. And then somebody says, won't somebody think of the poor owners and billionaires? Another person says, if a business can't pay a minimum wage, either it is a non-viable business or the wages need to be subsidized by taxing the uber wealthy oligarchs. Yep. Agree with that. It's just so, I don't know. It's bonkers. Quirky Geek Girl says Canada has sick leave, family leave, and 2 weeks. Businesses are not going out of business here. 2 weeks vacation minimum. Yeah, that's true. I mean, most, we talked about this last time we talked about the paid sick leave, but the United States is one of the only countries in the industrialized world that does not have a minimum paid time off. Most companies have a lot, and countries like Germany, their workers work something like 3 or 4 months less than workers in the U.S. do. They have that much more time off than we do. So yeah, not good. Just so gross.
taking this stuff away from Missourians who voted for it overwhelmingly. We've got a caller on the line. This caller from a 510 area code. Caller from a 510 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Kat from Teamsters Local 769 and Teamsters Mobilize. I'm also a member of Mass Communist Union, and I wanted to kind of build off of what Brother David Allen had mentioned about the buyouts at UPS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think he was absolutely right to bring up the point that this is an attack on workers at UPS directly on behalf of the shareholders. And as soon as they see, oh, we're cutting down staff, we're working leaner or whatever, the stock price jumps. However, I do believe that is really only half the picture here, because it is not only an attack on the workplace in general, but also a direct attack on the union specifically. And I think that is part of this whole strategy of the better, not bigger, because what is actually going on here? Well, we know in the net that UPS is cutting workers. Like overall, their workplace is shrinking. And by direct result of that, the bargaining unit is going to shrink. And they know that Teamsters are already bleeding members, right? So that's going to figure into their calculation of like, okay, less members in the Teamsters means the union is weaker, means we can squeeze people for even more profits. But even out of the workforce that is going to remain, because they can't run their business without workers, they're basically forcing turnover of the more senior workers. And I think that's what we're seeing in this buyout. They're trying to get rid of the people who have worked there the longest, who have accrued the most benefits, and replace them with people, as David had mentioned, we're going to be starting at the very bottom of the pay scale, the very bottom of the accrual of pension and healthcare and all that. And obviously that is going to not only make it cheaper for them to run their operation, but it's also going to cycle out a lot of workers who have been in the union for a long time, who probably have a greater awareness of the importance of that organization, and replace it with people who, of course, they now are newly able to try to indoctrinate against the union, right? So this is like pretty obviously an attack on the union. And just to be clear, this has already been happening for damn near a year. So like, obviously the news really, the mainstream media like doesn't care about UPS part-timers, and even our own union is not really putting this out there in their own official statements or whatever. But within the UPS workforce, like we have our own networks of communication, and we've been hearing again and again people talking about like whole buildings or whole shifts that are getting cut, laid off, shut down. And the part-timers were the first to go. I myself got laid off in my building in Hialeah because they got rid of the whole day shift. And there was not a peep from the union. I never saw any statements. I never saw any fancy social media graphics that we're seeing now. And of course, we know that historically the IBT leadership has tended to favor promoting like what they're doing for the drivers over the part-timers. That's part of the whole tier system, the whole divide and conquer. I really don't believe that the top leadership in the O'Brien administration actually is trying to fight in the interests of the drivers, but they do see them as a broader base of support for themselves, for like continuing to solidify their position as the labor lieutenants of capital. But that leadership at the top of the IBT, like they are not going to actually formulate an effective strategy to fight these attacks in the long term, because they're afraid to see us fight. They know historically what has happened when workers rise up in what is truly their own interest, and that is that the union leaders who have been selling them out all along, they get wiped out in the wave. So I think it is, ultimately we can't stop like automation period, but there is a lot we can do to fight. There is a lot we can do to try to secure better protections for our brothers and sisters in our unions now and in the future, both at the level of what already is in the contract, at the level of what we can fight for in future contracts, and then at the level of what we can fight for on behalf of the entire working class in this country. And anybody who tells us otherwise is frankly trying to keep us down. That's kind of like my big picture. We're going to be discussing this issue in our Teamsters Mobilize general meeting tomorrow, so definitely invite folks to continue the discussion there. But again, appreciate some of the information David Allen had shared, and y'all for giving the platform. I'll sign off there.
Appreciate the call and thanks for that.
Absolutely, I appreciate the call. Did we have another caller?
Yeah,
on the
we do
line?
have a caller. Yeah, we got another caller on the line. We'll go ahead and bring him on or bring her on. 740 area code is the number. 740 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Well, I'm not her. I am a him. That's my pronoun.
There you go.
So you can
great
use
to hear
that.
from you. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Is my name. Well, I think 57% of the voters in Missouri maybe ought to vote that governor out, but what do I know about Missouri? I'd like to kind of touch on what the former caller was talking about and what David Allen touched on with the driver buyout. Now, I think I look at it as it's the company's way, and she touched on it, to divide and conquer. But when you get rid of your old drivers, what happens when you go on a strike? Anybody with seniority, say 1 to 8 years, they're waiting, probably working part-time or in progression. Who do they look to during a strike or during negotiations? They look to the old drivers. What are they doing? Their eyes are on them. Now, what's in between 10 to 25 years of seniority? Those drivers, they have 2.2 kids, a mortgage, 2 car payments. They know enough by then. They want to stay in. They're going to stick to it. They understand solidarity. But they're not long enough in the tooth to lead. It's those older drivers who now have that opportunity at a buyout that I think UPS wants to get rid of. That's my idea on it.
Right.
Now, that's my take on it. So I got one more point that I would like to make, and it confuses me. And maybe you can touch on it, maybe. But other Teamsters, UPSers are going to understand this. But during COVID, even prior to COVID, we had labor shortages across the country. And these big hubs did what they called a market rate adjustment, where starting rate for a part-timer was $15. Well, that wasn't enough to get people in the door. So they upped it to $25. And anybody, of course, that wasn't making $25 went to that, or $22 or $21, wherever you were. But that didn't apply wholesale. That only applied to certain places, certain hubs. And yet, the international, I didn't hear anything about that. That was an extra contract agreement. I had guys in my center who weren't eligible for that. We're in an extended center out in the middle of nowhere, and they don't have that opportunity at that market rate adjustment. Now, if you're under a contract, isn't it fair for everybody? Isn't that the whole principle of union? Everybody created equal, everybody the same. Seems to me that way. And I just, it really, really sets me off that there's a lot of voice on this buyout. But when we had the market rate adjustment, it was just, well, whatever. All those guys are just crackheads. Get them in here and let them do the support work, and to hell with them.
Yeah, on the market rate adjustments,
you may have some questions for me. I'll try to answer them.
Yeah, well, I'll just say on the market rate adjustments, I don't know. You would have to. This would be a question for somebody that's more familiar. But my assumption would be that there was some sort of agreement made between UPS and the Teamsters signed off on those market rate adjustments. And I can understand both sides of an argument about these so-called market rate adjustments, and we actually had a lot of these conversations with letter carriers as they were negotiating their contracts, because there was there's real consternation among the letter carriers membership, particularly in places like New York and Los Angeles, where the cost of living is significantly higher, and yet they still have the same, $19, $20, $21 an hour minimum wage as somebody in, the middle of nowhere, rural Alabama, right? Where literally I saw, I saw an apartment come up for rent for like $600 a month. Which is, that's super cheap. And so with what the federal government does, which is where I come from, I'm a member of AFGE, we have a base salary, and then we have market rate adjustments everywhere, right? So everybody's got the same base salary, and then in Huntsville, Alabama, you get like 17% added onto that. In like Tuscaloosa, Alabama, it's more like 9 or 10%. In New York, it's like 25% or something like that. And so that kind of, I guess I would lean more towards that sort of thing, because that gives everybody kind of the same purchasing power. But I also understand that, ultimately for the company, it's a national company, your labor is worth the same to the national company in Alabama as it is in New York. And so shouldn't that be reflected? Should people in Alabama make less than people who do in New York? I don't know, but I can at least understand both sides of the argument on that. And so you would have to ask the union if there was an agreement actually with the Teamsters about the market rate adjustments. So yeah, does that, I don't know.
I get it. It just seems so wrong to me. And it did at the time. And, you have people that are in the same local, the same local. Some work in a hub, some work in extended centers. And there's that divide. That divide. And that was really tough to stomach. And, I pursued it, and as far as it would go. And I understood the reasoning, and a lot of it had to do with points you touched on. I get that. But it just seems odd to me. I really, that the international would come out with such velocity over these buyouts. I don't agree with the buyouts, and I think they're right on point. But man, it's just like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Well, I appreciate the call, brother.
All right, thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, brother.
See you.
All right. That gets us to about where we're about a little over 12:30. So, Adam, was there anything else that you wanted to get to before we wrapped up, or are you ready to roll?
Well, I think we could just give a couple wrap-up plugs and action items, and then call it a day.
Give me the what you got on your mind for the plugs.
Well, I know I wanted to make sure we mentioned what's going on at Labor Notes. They do have some events, some trainings coming up. I'm really interested in this one. They have a webinar on July 21st at 6 p.m. Central, Building Power Through Coordinated Bargaining and Contract Alignment. So that is really interesting, and I think very timely. So just to give you a little bit more on that, National contracts with a common employer like UPS or the big three automakers offer workers incredible power. But many of us are not so lucky. We work under fragmented local contracts with little to no coordination among bargaining units, even when we're fighting the same employer. So join Labor Notes for a discussion about how unions are coordinating bargaining and even aligning their contracts to maximize leverage in negotiations. They're also going to discuss relevant takeaways for workers seeking to align contracts leading up to the UAW's call for unified action on May Day 2028. And that's something obviously we've talked about on this show a good bit. Our Labor Council here in North Alabama endorsed that call to align contracts for May Day 2028. So, that's July 21st at 6 p.m. Central. Labor Notes is also offering their Stewards Workshop this month on Build a Steward Network. So that's intended for stewards and elected officers who work closely with stewards. And, basically it's about building a strong structure, a network of stewards in the workplace. And they're going to have a special guest from the News Guild. So if you are a steward or you're interested in becoming one, perhaps you're maybe ready to take the plunge, I definitely recommend getting some training through Labor Notes. They will also be offering a race and labor training session coming up next month, and stay tuned next week. We're going to have a special interview with Courtney Smith from Labor Notes about that workshop, why it's important, why it's relevant, and how you can participate. Next month's Stewards Workshop is going to be on just cause. So that's going to be very important, especially for those of you who do, handle discipline cases. And I'm also excited to report they have Secrets of a Successful Organizer coming back, and that's going to be in September. But that is the core organizing training that they offer. If you know anyone who is interested in organizing their workplace, or they should be interested in organizing their workplace, that is definitely a good place to steer them. And then I guess the last thing, let me pull up my notes here. The last thing I wanted to share, we mentioned it in last week in Southern Labor, but the AFL-CIO has put out a call to action regarding the Protect America's Workforce Act. And just for, background, many of our listeners are certainly well aware, but President Trump signed an executive order back in March that ripped the right to collectively bargain away from hundreds of thousands of federal workers. It was the single biggest act of union busting in American history. So there is a bipartisan bill introduced in Congress to overturn this executive order. And, the AFL-CIO is saying that they have mobilized to get a majority of the members of Congress now, both from Democrats and Republicans, to sign on as co-sponsors for that bill. So they say they have the votes to get it passed out of the House, and they have a new way to get the bill to a vote. It's called a discharge petition, which skips all the political procedures and shenanigans and brings a bill quickly to the floor for a vote. But they need every single member of Congress who says they support America's unions to sign that discharge petition right now to get this on the move. So for you listening, you can help. You can do something about that. You can call your member of Congress, regardless of who they are, what party they're part of. Call them and urge them to sign the discharge petition for the Protect America's Workforce Act. And there's also a number that you can call, and you will get connected to that congressman. So even if you don't know who your House member is, you don't know how to get in touch with them, it's 844-994-4554. Again, that's 844-994-4554. You can call your representative through that number. They'll get you plugged in. And just go ahead and do that. Put it on your to-do list. Make sure you make that happen. Let your congressperson know how you feel, that you believe federal workers do deserve collective bargaining rights. All workers deserve collective bargaining rights. So place those phone calls. And if you don't get through to a human being, do leave a voicemail, leave a message, ask that you get a return phone call. Make those folks work. They all supposed to work for us. So make sure you let your voices be heard. And other than that, that's all I got, Jacob.
That'll be it for us this week then. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Solidarity forever, y'all.